Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thanks, everyone, for joining us as folks are trickling into the virtual room here. Excited to be joined by everyone on this Sunday afternoon. We'll go ahead and get started as everyone is joining. My name is Emily Weldon. I'm joined here by Nicholas Ayerbe-Barona. We are the festival co-directors of the Vancouver Short Film Festival. I'm really excited to be presenting our third panel in our series of shorts to features, educational panels as part of the VSFF at Home series. It's going to be a great Sunday. Thanks for tuning in. Before we get into meeting our lovely panelists and all those good things, we'd like to begin by acknowledging that the Vancouver Short Film Festival in the city of Vancouver, where we operate, is located on unceded shared traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. For further information on these and other Indigenous territories where we live, work, and create, you can learn more at native-land.ca, which is a great resource for that.
Thank you, Emily. And some announcements before we get started. The VSFF is really proud to announce that we will be back live and in person at the Van City Theatre for a retrospective screening of the festival's 2021 and 2022 films. More details to come soon, so follow us at Van Short Film Fest, wherever you can find us on social media and on our website. We would like to thank Creative VC for supporting this panel series, as well as our partners in the regions, Cinevic, the Kamloops Film Society, and the Vancouver International Film Festival, for their ongoing support of this series. This is the second time that we do it. We're really happy to have everybody here. We hope to continue being able to educate the community through professional development panels such as this one. We've got an amazing creative brunch here today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our moderator for today. Avi Glanzer is the Community Partners and Outreach Coordinator, as well as Development at the Vancouver Short Film Festival. Avi, take it away.
Hello. Hello and welcome to the VSFF at Home Shorts to Features panel series, Directors Panel. My name is Avi Glanzer and I will be moderating this panel for you all today. We wanted to create a series of panels which would illuminate the movement from short films into feature films by speaking with a number of filmmakers who have recently made that exact step. What we're going to be doing today is asking a series of questions relating to various phases of production and hearing the filmmakers' experiences. But first, I want to remind everyone that today, after this panel, around 3 p.m., we will be having a round of VSFF Keep It Short speed meetings, and we would love for all of you to attend. To do so, you just need to register at vsff.com, and we will be able to send you the link when that begins. So please do so. Now our panel. So today, let me introduce to you, we have Alex Lasheras, director of the feature The Beehive in participation with Telefilm Canada. We have Karen Lamb, director of Curse of Willow Song and recipient of the 2020 Leo Award for Best Director. And we have Jason Karman, who has just completed their first feature, Golden Delicious, as part of the Telefilm Talent to Watch program. Hello, everyone, and welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
Got you on mute, Jason. Hi. So, just let's go around in a circle and you guys introduce yourselves a little more to the group here. Let's start with Jason.
Thanks, Abby. Thanks, Emily and Nick, for having me here today. So yeah, I'm a Vancouver-based writer, director, producer, but in this specific case, I'm a director, and I've been directing films since 2004. I've done 17 shorts, and a lot of it is coming of age, character driven dramas, and it's resonated specifically in the Asian and queer spaces, both nationally and internationally, and that's where I've gotten some of my awards. Um, so, yeah, I transitioned from basically being a um geologist telling stories of the earth to a filmmaker, because I love to speak with people and learn about the human condition. And also, people talk back to you versus rocks. So it's always a good thing. Yeah, I think today I'm really excited at finishing my first feature, which is around May 17th. May 13th, and hopefully that'll open some new doors for everyone on our team. So
Excellent. Let's go to Karen next.
Hi, I am a Vancouver-based, I guess, writer, director, producer. I started as a producer. I specialize in horror, and I do some thrillers and genre. Basically, if there isn't blood, I'm not particularly interested. So Curse of Willow Song is my third feature. I don't know how many short films I've made, but there's been quite a few. And I just finished my first studio film for NBC Universal. It's the 7th film in the Bring It On series, and it's cheerleaders meets slasher film. So, yeah.
And let's go on to Alex.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I guess I classify myself as a filmmaker. It's in this case, I've been writing and directing and producing my first feature. Producing part is the first for me, so that's exciting. The Beehive is on its way to being completed next month. We're trying to get in for special deadlines. And what else? I don't know. I'm just really excited to be on this panel and speaking with you guys. And I just want to say to everyone who's watching or listening, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us. It's part of being a filmmaker, is just listening to other filmmakers and being part of the discussion. So I'm just really excited to discuss with these people about making movies.
Well, great. Thank you. We're all happy to have you here. You guys are a panel I'm particularly excited for. So let's just dive in. So we're going to start with the phase of development. And in development, we have, a number of questions here. So we'll just start at the top, work our way through. And I'll be tossing it off to each of you guys randomly, so no one knows who's coming first. How do you choose your stories, and how does this choice differ between shorts and features, and how do you determine the right format for that story? Let's start with Jason.
well, for me, it's theme that helps determine what kind of story I'm attracted to, and then scope is how I differentiate how a story is a short versus a feature. And what I mean by scope, I mean, like, does this story take place in the course of a week or a day, or is it over 6 months or a year, or maybe it's an epic and it's 100 years. So I think if it's less than 6 months, then it can be told in a short film. But ideally, you want a long form format to be able to explore to give space and weight to some of the important things that happen in character development with a longer period of time. So that's how I determine features and shorts.
Let's go to Karen next. Same question.
Yeah, I always start with a short a short story. So I just start writing, and I start with concepts. So it'll be an unfortunate event that happened to me usually, oh no, I ended up in a dumpster, like those sorts of things. And then I kind of go with that. I agree with Jason as far as when I'm done that first pass of whatever the story is, I kind of don't set a limit as to how it is. I kind of decide whether or not it's something that's big or something small. So I wrote a first, I think I've written 3 novels, and one of them I would love to turn into a miniseries because it obviously has a lot more to it than, you wouldn't be able to do it well in a short film, for example.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to Jason. Sorry, Alex.
Yeah, I guess for me with this question, I feel like it comes down to ideas. For me, I think there's ideas that just really resonate with you. I'm sure some people on the panel or you guys are familiar with that little book that David Lynch wrote, where he's talking about fishing. And I think that's a really good analogy, that you sort of like, maybe you're doing something one day and then you get caught wind of an idea, something pops in your mind, and you just kind of, it's the ones that will strike you. And then you'll just sort of, it'll just get you, maybe a week later you're thinking about it and you develop it. And then I think it's sort of the ideas that you choose to develop become the stories themselves. So it's like, what ideas do you choose to develop, and where do you sort of, how do you navigate that, I guess?
Okay. Let's talk about writing process. Do you work with a writer, write on your own? And how does this process differ between shorts and features? Let's start with Karen for this one.
Oh, it really does depend on what it is. Like, for example, when I was working on the studio film, that was something where they already had at least a script. So you're basically coming on board and doing a polish on it. If it's my own projects, I tend to write, again, free form. Just like I don't write outlines. I don't write. I don't beat it out or anything. It's just a free form short story, and sometimes it turns into a novel. Sometimes it's a novella, and then I kind of decide from there. But I'm happy to work on my own. I'm happy to work with other people as well.
Mm-hmm. Jason?
I found that it's better to write with a writer because 2 heads are better than 1, and the world just becomes a bit much more richer. I've written my own shorts in the past, and I've noticed that perhaps there's only my specific point of view in a certain theme, and so to further that theme, to encompass all the different points of view that could perhaps deal with that theme, I think having another writer come on board that shares in your aesthetic, that shares in your values, is helpful, because it can expedite the process, enrich it, like I said, and even challenge you. So I think it's good to be challenged, especially as artists today. I feel like sometimes we work in our own silos, in a vacuum, and we think that that's the only way to approach things. And well, it's a rude awakening when you go into production. Oops.
The idea of a collaborative process. Alex, same question to you.
I typically always, no, I shouldn't say typically. I always write by myself, but I wouldn't say that it's not a collaborative process, because I'm always sending it to somebody, asking their opinion, getting critical feedback, and to basically back to Jason's point, it's just like you need that rude awakening for someone to say, like, this doesn't work. This, someone needs to bring you back to reality of what works and what doesn't work. But I would love to collaborate with somebody in the future. I'd love to try that process. I think it scares me a bit to collaborate with a writer, but I think, like, back to Jason's point just now, I think that's a good thing, is to challenge yourself as an artist and things like that to further your development. And also I'd like to try writer's room. I've never, like, that whole thing really interests me. I've never been a part of that.
It's like being stuck in a committee. Sorry, it's like being stuck in a committee for 10 weeks. Yeah, I've written on in 2 writers' rooms now, and you really have to like people for that one. So.
Is there like a head writer that or not, or there's like a lead writer? Is there
Yeah, it's your showrunner. So your showrunner
the showrunner, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. And then you have your pecking order within that room. So yeah, you're all feeding ideas and brainstorming. So again, 10 weeks of being in a committee. It's awesome.
I love this.
Is the showrunner the lead though?
Yeah, absolutely. You're there as a writer to support because the showrunner is really ultimately it's like sort of your director person, that at least in the writer's room. And so all of us as writers, you're there to support their vision, and you're throwing out ideas, but if they want to go down a certain direction, then all of us go along with that direction. So unless you really feel strongly about it. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
And I think that's where sharing your values and aesthetic with the people in the room is important, because then you're not like regularly butting heads, right? So I'm currently working on my second feature right now, and with another writer, and I introduced the theme, and I have some specific scenes that resonate with me, and so we're trying to connect the dots and write out the beats of the story, and sometimes it goes very fast. Other times, especially during Act 2, it's like no man's land, and I
feel that. I definitely feel lost in Act 2 most of the time.
Yeah, So I guess when you're working with a writer, though, I just and you hired that writer, then you are kind of like the showrunner in a way. But of course, just making sure that you welcome and include their ideas is important. Make them feel heard, which is key. So.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, I was just going to say and it's a little different. I'm going into potentially my 5th feature with it's another studio one, and in that case, they have a kind of like a big overarching theme, and my job is to actually pitch for something that will fit within that brand that they've got. So it's a different way of approaching story, because they have specific hallmarks that they want within this overarching thing. So it's like, say it's like, for example, with the Bring It On series that I was working on, it's a cheerleader film. So, you've got, it's cheerleader based, obviously. And in this one, it's a thriller. And so what they are requesting from me is a premise, overall sort of ideas within their framework, and also 3 set pieces is what they call it. So 3 water cooler moments that they think we haven't seen on screen before. So that's how we approach story from that side.
And what's an example of a water cooler moment?
Just as a throw out there, like, say, the Matrix bullet, when it comes out, it's iconic. It's a thing. So I think Hitchcock might have said something like this, where you have 3 key scenes that, like those are the ones you work toward. The studios work toward that in the same sort of way. Like they have 3, when you're in development and you don't have a script yet, they're literally saying, what's our trailer going to look like? How are we going to sell this? And so it's it's almost a reverse engineer of what you do as a writer. You're saying, here's the 3 key set pieces that we're going to create out of this.
So this is the old adage of like the day following the TV episode, everybody's at work sitting around the water cooler, talking about that moment. Understood.
Yeah.
Something that got brought up in this, I'm interested in, when you're working with a writer, so you receive a script that is in some sort of stage. How does the process of putting your own stamp on that as a director work when moving towards, the next step of the process? And I'll open with Karen on this one.
Oh, I just got one, actually. I got an MOW just very recently that I really liked. First and foremost, I have to see whether there's something that I can bring to the table with it, because I get a lot of scripts as well, that people just wanting me to direct and not necessarily to write. And so it's sort of saying, like, what are the things that I really love about the script that I think I could actually do with? And then there's always like little, I guess, just director flourishes, like this is how I would want to do it. Or there might be for me, it tends to be like, oh, can we have more death here? But I'm kidding, not quite like that. But then my second, right after that, what I do is I let the writer know that I'm even interested, and we have a long conversation about it, just to say, like, these are the things that I love about the script, just to make sure that, like Jason was saying, that we're sharing the same morality, like that we're approaching the story in the same way, that, you know, I'm not seeing this as a dark comedy and they were meaning it as a drama. You know what I mean? Like, that's a different tone altogether. So making sure that we are sharing at least the same commonality. And then, then I might suggest changes that I would want to see happen. And then we kind of go from there to see whether or not it's a good fit.
Mm-hmm. And Jason and Alex, do you have any experience with this part of the process, receiving a script and kind of putting your own stamp on it? Or is this something that would be new to you guys in the future?
I've had some experience with it. Like what Karen mentioned, you want to find what you can contribute to the script when you receive it, right? So sometimes, for example, I received a story where you can connect with it at a certain level. I don't want to be too specific because I don't want to. It's a small community in Vancouver, so I don't want to just reveal the details of that. But I think you find what resonates with you, what you can contribute. So for me, it's queer characters, Asian stories, male fragility, and role models. These things resonate very strongly with me, and I like to. And I try to find those moments and I guess work with them. But sometimes the writer just doesn't agree with you. And, you know, if that's the case, then, you know, thank you for the opportunity. And perhaps it's not a good fit. So that's what happened last time. And, you know, it's a really good story, but sometimes you just have to realize, okay, if we don't share the same sort of values in terms of furthering the story, then this might not work, right? So,
yeah,
that's my experience.
Yeah, and I would just say, no, I haven't had the opportunity to do that yet. I would love to try being a director for hire. That would be when or, you know, if that came up, the opportunity, that would be interesting. But as Jason's saying, it has, like, I think it's a little strange with the Canadian media landscape, and it's different from, you know, Hollywood and studios and all that. And there's a separation there. I don't know if that's a whole nother conversation, because I think here, because it's so tied to funding, there's also tied to, like, who you are as a creator, and identity is tied in there too. So if I, you know, say a script came along, and I think this is kind of what Jason's speaking about too, that doesn't align with your values, but you know, it has to align with your values if you're going to tie yourself there. Like, for I don't know, maybe Karen could speak to that, of, you know, a horror script or whatever, if it's in her genre and everything. But if, you know, she gets a rom-com, and you know, maybe that can then you also have an impact on your career and how people see you, and how, you know, those sort of things. So it's tricky to navigate that.
Because I get a lot of horror films as well that I have no desire to do, like just stupid teenagers moving into the forest and getting slaughtered is not within my, like, as in, people think that because I do horror, oh, you'll want to do this. And it's like, no, I'm not interested in that. So it always has to be something. You have to be able to, resonate with it on some level.
Let's move on to the next question, which I know is going to have different answers for all of you, which I'm excited about. At what point do you begin working with a producer or producers, and what do you look for in that collaboration? Let's start with Alex for this one.
That's a really good question. What point do you start collaborating with a producer? I mean, I guess it depends. I guess from my experience, I guess I'll speak more to just saying that producers are so, in the indie world, they're so critical, a good producer. And something that I learned recently is, and I'll say this to everyone that is a writer, director, or doing it, short films, or aspiring or whatever, become a producer, or at least become familiar with producing and producing knowledge. So in my last so in this feature film I'm doing now, I became a producer, and I've never, I don't know, just my eyes have opened way more in terms of just control and owning your work and steering things and just taking ownership of your craft if you're a writer director. So that's probably my biggest tip in that category. It's just it can scare yourself if you're a creative, because you just want to, I just want to go in and I just want to write this thing, or I just want to go direct this thing, or I just want to focus on the creative. But if you familiarize yourself with producing it, it'll help enormously. Yeah.
Jason, same question.
I bring on a producer when I have a draft of the script that I feel is production ready. And by that, I mean that the number of locations and characters all feel justified and manageable. So the design elements, production design elements, feel realistic within the proposed budget level that you're striving for. Now, I'm saying this because I've done 17 shorts, and so I have an idea of how things cost. A lot of it is self-taught. This is part of my story, is that when I first started out here in the aughts, nobody gave me a chance to be a director, and so I had to go and create my own opportunity through documentary filmmaking, dance on screen films, thrillers, and scripted narratives. So I learned things on my own, and I didn't want to jump into features because I didn't want to squander that first opportunity, which is very important. If you want to do this, you don't want to be rushing into it. So yeah, I mean, I just that's how I'm able to kind of feel if a script is production ready. Then I bring on a producer. Then the producer that I bring on has to be on the same level as me in terms of experience. I don't want to have a producer that's super experienced, because then the relationship might be imbalanced, right? This is I'm looking for a producer who is who I can trust, who I can respect, and vice versa. But at the same time, we can learn together. That's the important thing. And they take initiative. These are qualities that I look for. We don't have to necessarily agree on everything, but we just have to know how to communicate to one another on a professional level. Sorry, I'm going way off on this, but it's really important. And I am very happy in Kristen Stilling being my producer. I think she's an awesome producer. Kristen, if you're listening, I love you.
We had her with us yesterday, and she's a gem. I've known her for more time than I can really count. Same question to you, Karen.
Yeah, I think Alex and I started in the same way. I was an indie producer first and foremost. So, but for me, the approach is always depending on the commerciality of the project. If it's obviously a studio film, or if it's meant for an MOW, if it's meant for whatever, I try to get a producer on as soon as possible. Sometimes the producer is actually asking for the work. Like, for example, in the studio system, they've already developed it, or they're looking for something specific, and you're coming on board after. If it's an independent, like me-driven project, then it really depends on, I guess, where I think it's going to end up going. Like if I was writing an MOW, I might start pitching the concept first, because there's no point in my writing something entirely and having no place to put it. I kind of like to get my feelers out first, unless it's something very specific and me-driven. Then I will write it all out. And because I'm also a producer, I'll take it to a certain degree, and then maybe bring someone on board, sort of thing. So, and to Jason's point on this, I like having a producer who's way more experienced than me if possible, because I want to be learning. I don't want to be the one. I will give a chance to someone who's not as experienced as I am, but I've been producing since, I guess, 2000 or so. So it's been 22 years. So at this point, I really want a producer who's hopefully stronger and better than I am, because otherwise I'm going to be stuck in a, just what I know is what I know. So
That's actually a good point, Karen. I didn't think of it that way. So about getting somebody who's a bit more experienced than you to come on board.
I learned. Yeah. I mean, on this last studio film, Jesus, I learned so much because I had executives, I had, a really experienced producer, and they're so hands-on creative that it was basically me catching up, actually. So.
Okay.
And what do you mean by hands-on creative?
They give so many story notes, and so because it's a studio project, compared to Canadian producers who I am irritated to see us treating them like glorified business affairs people, or glorified PMs, because in the American system, they often come up with a storyline. They might have optioned an idea or a novel or something that they want developed, and then you're coming on board as a creative to help them do that. And they have a strong creative instinct as to where it goes. And to me, I also want to know that my producer knows the end audience and the end marketplace that they're taking it out to, because otherwise we're just shooting ducks in the dark. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I don't know what the audience is. Whereas when you're working with the studio overlords and, producers who work in that sphere, they're telling you right now, like, we've done the research. We know who our audience is. This is what you have to hit. This is your target. So it meant I learned a lot. That's all I can say. Yeah.
But to that end, though, I'm concerned about having the people who hold the purse strings have that much experience and power over you that they could have that much more creative control over you. I mean, I guess I access a lot of the grants in the Canadian sphere, and they don't allow that. They prefer the writer director to have that creative control. And so, yeah, if you have a more experienced producer, super experienced, they may, that there's a dynamic, there's a slightly power.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about.
It absolutely is a power difference. And the most you get on these is you get a director's cut, but they can they'll take it over and finish it up for you. But to that end, seeing, they kept me involved all the way through. I got to see all the cuts that they were doing. And what I found was that, oh God, I didn't know what I thought I knew. So that was it too. You can fall on your own sword and say, yeah, I got my final cut. But when I look at what they did with my final cut, I am so much happier with what they did. So to be honest, I think I learned a lot. Whereas, I thought I knew what I was doing. And then you watch it and it's like, oh no, they did that better than me. Shit. Okay. So anyway, it's a good thing.
As a producer, I've always thought about this balance, and it's a very interesting one because earlier on in my career and in my work, it was always about trying to make sure my voice was heard as a producer on a project. And later on, I started to realize, and the way I prefer to work now is you're there to pull from the director their vision and as much of what they're trying to do as possible. And for a number of reasons, a director might not have the ability time-wise or capability-wise or, where they are in their career to know what the best option is for the thing they're trying to do. And that relationship and that trust that you can have in trying to pull that from them, pull their best work from their story into the piece, that's a creative element that you can have onto the project that isn't just my creative element onto the project, but is something that really comes from a skill set. So I do think it's really interesting about having producers with different capability levels working on projects with directors with their own different capability levels. You get a different dynamic with those relationships a lot.
Definitely.
Let's talk about we mentioned grant applications. That happens to be my next question. Can you talk about your approach to writing grant applications, particularly with regards to things like director statements and vision statements, additional materials, mood boards, etc.? And for this one, let's open with Jason.
So I've been at it for a while, and I recently got my first Canada Council for the Arts grant in 2020 after a decade of rejection. So I don't know what changed, but I think it's just persistence. So from what I understand, so when I write director statements, it's a document that talks about process, values, and what's innovative for you. So that's how I kind of understand a director's statement, while a vision statement is specific to the project and how you'd like to have the story look and feel, and how you want to achieve this and why, right? So that's the vision statement, and then infusing that with your own personal connection to it helps, and then making it relevant also helps as well. So those are my reasons for directors and vision statements, and of course you supplement your vision statement with mood boards, style guides, wish lists, lookbooks. So all these other things, they're mainly visual material that you procure from the internet to kind of enrich your words. So that's it in a nutshell in terms of grant writing. And it's a you literally have to be a wordsmith in terms of being a good grant writer, and I recommend just having a good social circle to read your work and give you feedback on that.
Alex, same question. No, these are great answers. I want to say there's no wrong answers, and like there's being illuminated into people's own processes is a huge part of what we're here to do. And the more your processes differ, the more interesting these conversations are, because the more breadth we get to understand from these processes themselves. Alex, I'm going to move the same question to you.
Yeah. I'm just going to echo what Jason started off with. Rejection. You're going to get rejected so much. That's part of the game. That's part of it. Get used to it. You're not going to get used to it. It's always going to feel a little ding when you get that email that says you didn't get it. But then one day you'll get an email. I'm sure if you're persistent, I'm sure of it, because we're all human and we just need to keep trying, and you just need to keep shaping that grant application or whatever it is, and you'll get the success one, and then there'll be more. There will be more after that. So just keep doing it, because once you get the success one, then you suddenly feel this thing, and oh wait, I can do it. And then if I did it once, well, I'm sure I can do it again. I'm sure I'll be able to do it again. So you will have those moments. Apply. Canada Council for the Arts. I just wanted to mention, because Jason mentioned this one, and I had the exact same experience. So many rejections from them. But what is interesting, what I would say is, talk to them. And for every grant, whatever organization it is, read the guidelines, and then really go phone a program officer and talk to them about specifically each question. What are they looking for? And not enough people do this. They think oh, Canada Council, these people are, special people that I can't. No, they're actually there for you. Our tax dollars are going to, make them work. So they're working for us. So as filmmakers, they're there for you to go and knock on their doors and ask them questions. And they're very nice people a lot of the time, and they'll help you. So so I just wanted to say, I wanted to say actually maybe one thing about grants, which is, I remember the Canada Council grant, I was having so much trouble with it, all the times I was applying. There's this first question they ask you, and it says, I can't remember what it is. It's something like, what do you want to do, or what is this project about, or something like this. It's a very vague sort of start, what is this project? And I used to always start with some lofty, poetic, maybe I would start going off about something thematically, or something about my grant. Don't do that. I talked to the program officer, and she's like, oh, this question, what they want here is, who, what, where, when, why. What is your project? If you're going to do a documentary short about salmon spawning, and you're going up, to how many people are involved? How many days are you doing it? Where are you going? What cameras are you using? Like these logistical things. Those are the things you should be writing about. Not, this isn't the part to like, go off about the salmon and the themes of climate change and all that stuff. That comes later. So that's just a really important thing is, and I'm speaking specifically about Canada Council for the Arts, because that's another thing. Know your grants. Know each grant is going to be different, and it's going to have different requirements. So this question, Avi, it's like we could do a whole day on this writing grants, and it's such a big thing, and it's actually a really huge thing for the Canadian indie filmmaking, because Karen is kind of between these two worlds. If you're starting here in Canada and you're doing indie filmmaking, it's such a huge and critical part is grant writing.
Don't worry, we absolutely plan to. This is the starting point. I mean, this is the question is starting with talking to directors about it, and you're absolutely correct. It's predominantly the way that Canadian features get made at this point in our careers, is these applications. Karen, let's move on to you with the same question.
Oh God, it's been such a long time since I've written a grant. Because I work in horror and genre, I don't get a lot of grants, and I get it. You know what I mean? It's supposed to be a fairly commercial genre to begin with. So most of the time, there's not a lot of grant writing from me. There tends to be a lot of credit card usage. And and whatever, if I've ever been hired to do something else, I take a bit of money out of each one of the projects that I work on and make a short film. So most of my stuff has been self-funded, or I think my second short film, Doll Parts, was done with my director's fee from my first feature. So it was pretty well me gripping. I think we did it on a 7D camera, and essentially you kind of do it with what you've got and the resources that you've got. That said, I've been the recipient of quite a number of programs. So my first short film was The Cabinet, and I did that through the NSI, the National Screen Institute Drama Prize. That doesn't exist now, but I was just on a program that's revamping at least that sort of thing. I had Totally Television. I've been involved in a lot of different programs, and that's how I got my directing experience, just to start with, and then it was credit cards. So
if you haven't busted a credit card, are you really an indie filmmaker?
That's it. And my first, I think my second feature was actually a credit line on my condo. So there you go.
We used to call them credit card features in film school. Like the aspiration that, okay, there's, you can bust your credit limit, make a movie. What's the worst that can happen?
I started looking at to see how much my kidney was worth on the market, and your liver will regenerate, so you don't need all of it. So,
you heard it here, kids.
Can I just jump in there and say I don't condone this. I'll just say I have done that. That was my first feature, was that experience, but this is what financing and funding and applications are all for. Don't spend your own money on films, or you will bankrupt yourself very quickly.
But I would argue
but yeah, you can.
Yeah, you can.
When you're on the credit card films.
My second feature, Evangeline, I funded myself, but my third feature, Hearse of Willow Song, was done with the profits off of my second one. So there you go. You do not need to bankrupt yourself. The other way of looking at it is that if I don't put skin in the game, why should I expect anyone else to? So
no, I'm not saying don't put skin in the game. I guess I'm more concerned about people that think oh, this is what I need to do, is I need to put this feature on a credit card or take a loan, and then you're paying it off at another side job or something else, and those sort of things.
Well, there's the myth of the return, right? Like the
exact that's it. That's the heart of it.
Just because you put the money into the project, just because you made the film, doesn't mean someone's there to buy it necessarily, and that's a hard truth that we all confront, making this stuff effectively on spec, right? Like that's what we're doing when we're making our own projects.
Can I add that sometimes you volunteering or working in kind is a sort of investment. So you're not, you don't have to, spend the money on credit cards, but it's like, who's going to take up the mantle to make sure everything is on track? That's you, most likely.
Yeah.
in an
You
independent.
might be catering it. You might be location scouting.
Right.
You might be doing everything to do with that for sure.
And that's free. So
Yeah.
I also just wanted to echo Canada Council. I want to just circle back to Canada Council for the Arts and what Alex said about calling up a program officer. So for Golden Delicious, actually, I called my program officer, and this pertains to shorts of features. I asked, why didn't I get in the first time? So I applied twice. The second time I got in, and with the same project. And the program officer said to me, "You've done 17 shorts, Jason. Why does this film have to be a feature?" That was the question that the program officer and the jury asked me. So I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I just have to justify that clear in my program, in my grant application, why this has to be a feature and not another short.
Mhm.
So it was as simple as that, and that was me picking up the phone and calling the program officer and saying, why didn't I get it? What's the feedback from the jury? And they just want to know why this one.
Right. Well,
yeah.
let's speak to that for a moment. The idea of, constantly reapplying, and I'm guessing some of those reapplications over the years are with the same projects. What changes in between one application and the next with that application? Like, what do you do to that application to apply with it again? Is it just reused and you keep trying, or what kind of adjustments do you make? And let's open with Jason on this one.
It's you basically reuse the work that you've done in the past in the next application. You refine it. You take the feedback from the program officer, from the jury, and then you address those questions in order to fill in the gaps, and make it stronger. Because I've been on the BC Arts Council jury, so I've seen. I'm familiar with how the adjudication process works. So you're most likely scoring somewhere in the middle of the pack, right? And so what you do to refine your grant application will push you to the top tier. You don't have to be right at the top, but you just have to be at the top 30%, which is where the money's being applied to. So you just know how to move the needle just a bit further, and that's how you do it. Yeah.
Alex, same question.
Yeah, I guess a couple things I would add to writing grants is just keep in mind that the people reading these grants read a lot of grants. They're going through like 60 grants and they come up in your grant. So kind of put yourself in their shoes when you're writing. Start like what I was saying before, start with just another thing specific about Canada Council. These people they come from music backgrounds, they come from painting, they come from dance, they come from all different kinds of disciplines. So, put them in your context. I'm a filmmaker. They don't know anything about filmmaking. Take that context, for example. So, you're describing what you want to do, the project, and then there was something else I wanted to say about grants, and I'll come back to it. Maybe you can jump to Karen.
Karen.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, with regards to applying multiple times over time, what changes in between those applications with the same project?
I can speak mainly to being on many, many juries myself. So I tend to sit on juries more than I write things. And sometimes you'll see projects coming in again and again. And it's almost seeing what Jason was saying, the refinement in between, like that they've taken whatever jury notes you've given the first time round, and now it's actually gotten like somehow better, like as in if one of the jury notes was that the script was, the second act was just not working in some way. You want to be able to see that second act is now working a lot better. Like you want to be able to see, like if they came in with a fairly weak creative vision, I want to see that they've actually gone back to the drawing board and come up with something stronger. So it's not necessarily reworking it entirely. It's to see that they've taken the feedback that you've given as a jury and that something positive has happened in between.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Abby, I remember what I wanted to say.
Yeah, by all means, let's hear it.
The deadline for the grant, finish your grant before the deadline. This is like, and also, Yeah, no, it's a big one. It's just like I got better at grant writing when I said like, oh no, I'm gonna finish it 2-3 days before it's done, and then you finish it, and then you're like, maybe the next day you want to like just rip, like Jason said, maybe you want to refine something, maybe you want to go back in there or something like this. So yeah, just leave yourself some time before the deadline.
I think that's a solid note for all deadlines. It's something I've tried to work into my own work in general. You know, I did an application, a job application this week, and you give yourself a day or two before you're submitting it. That day or two ends up being a day where most of the changes I made to the application happen in those days, which I wouldn't have had time for if I would have just been content with the one I had finished. So I think that's a piece of advice I'd want to parrot for all walks of life and your work. If you have an application deadline, if you have a deadline in general, try to beat it by a few days, spend some time thinking about it. And that's just something everybody should be working into their process.
Go ahead, Karen.
I was just going to say on that note, if you are looking for letters of reference for your application grant, please don't do that the night before, because I don't know how many people have said to me, like, I need a letter of reference, and then it's like, and it's due tomorrow. And I'm really? Like, thank you. Like, just give it's just a consideration for anyone who is asking for that. Just, give yourself some time and some room for people to actually respond to that. So.
Yeah, that is a very fair point. Alex, did you have something you wanted to say?
They keep on, like, I must be like running on no sleep because they keep on popping in and out of my head, like these little notes. But yeah, no, this is just I don't know. This is such a big topic, at least for me. I think, like, you know, other creatives can feel the same and people out there can feel the same, because it's like, they know what it's like to get, I know what I was going to say. Ego.
Perfect.
Like, put your ego a bit aside when you get rejection. There's a reason why it got rejected. There's something that wasn't working. It doesn't mean that that there wasn't value in what you're writing. I'm sure there's a lot of value in your grant and the application and your idea and your creativity. So it's just you're not communicating it to the jury as well as you could be. And like Jason said, actually, it's really good. It's like it's not even like you have to become, 1 out of 100, like the first place out of 100. It's like you need to just get into this 30% zone. Like, think about it like that. Like, you're just trying to be like, get into that tier. And different juries are different. Every time you apply, there's a different jury. So keep that in mind. Like, the next time you apply, it's not going to be the same people that are looking at your application. So.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. All right. Well, let's move from development, because you are right. We could spend an entire panel just talking about grants, and we will in the future, hopefully. That would be a great topic. Let's move into pre-production. And so I'm going to start with this question. How do you approach bringing on board and working with department heads, key creatives? And does this process differ between shorts and features? And I'll start this with Jason.
Okay. Well, this is an interesting question. So my approach is to interview all key creative heads and look at their resumes and their reels and check references. I know that's exhausting, but I find that if I do that, I will mitigate any sort of potential personality conflicts later on, or perhaps if the key creatives are spreading themselves way too thinly across many other projects, including my own, then I will be able to see that based on what they've done in the past and what they're saying to me in the interview, for example, right? So that's how I kind of consider key creative heads. And then if one head comes in that's a referral, I want to know if the story resonates with them. That's the most important thing, especially on indie, where I can't compete financially and offer them union rates. I have to know that the story appeals to them and that they would go that extra mile to for the project, because well, frankly, there will be times when I will need them because I'm going to be doing that. And so if they're committing themselves to this project and 3 others at the same time, then that's going to be an issue. So basically interviewing is really important for me, and then looking at what they've done, knowing why they're in it, besides the money. So not a lot of money in indie world, Canada.
That is absolutely the case. Karen, same question.
With my indie projects, I tend to have a core group of people that I've worked with. And then there might be some substitutions based on whether or not someone's busy, or, I've met someone, I met someone new. I could give them a shot. So it'll be that. If you're working on a commercial project, there's obviously, even if you think you have all the money in the world, it's not that, like there's union considerations. I've been hired, and it didn't go ahead, but I got hired for an MOW, for example, and it ended up being that they didn't go union, and yet you're at a certain budget level. So now the pool is smaller, basically, because what you can get away with in indie, because no one is union, or if they are union, they're doing a special favor for you. It's different when you're doing something for broadcast or whatever it is, and you've decided to go non-union. What does that mean? And with the studio, it's a little bit different too, because they have a select group of people that they vetted, and your job as a director at that point is to interview all of them. But in your interview, all the executives are also there. So it's a weird thing when you're interviewing someone and all the execs are also sitting there and watching you interview them. So it's a performative sort of interview. So, yeah.
Now, Alex, same question to you.
Could you repeat the question, Abby?
Yes, certainly. How do you approach bringing on board and working with department heads and key creatives? And does this differ between shorts and features?
I don't bringing on key creatives. I mean, I guess the biggest thing I would just say is find people that you can work with, that you can trust. It's sort of going, you need. I think what Jason was saying about vetting people is really good. I can honestly say I haven't vetted people that much when I'm thinking about it. Like, I should actually call up when I see their resume, like I should call up these references and stuff and actually check a bit more of these. Because, usually what I'm going off of is we have a meeting, and it's really like, is this someone is this somebody I want to work with? Is this somebody that I can work well with? But the biggest thing that I will say is find people in their positions that can do stuff better than you can. So that's to say, like, if it's a production designer, well, there's so many areas in production design. Find someone that just loves production design. That's just like, talks about, I don't know, Gothic architecture, and, gets excited about this. And like, I don't know anything about that, but yeah, this is amazing. That's like, give me more ideas like this. So find, DOP, like I love camera angles. I can't light at all. I am not good at lighting, but I love perspectives. I'm a visual person. So find someone, like find a DP or find a gaffer, or for that matter, that just is like, love shaping light. Find somebody like that. Find out what you're not good at, and find people in those categories that you love to work with and that can do those better than you.
Yes, Jason.
I just realized, a part of your question was the difference between shorts to features, right? So with shorts, I think that there's more latitude to explore new talent, to take a risk on someone who's emerging and put them into a key creative role and see how they handle that, right? Because the duration is much shorter. But with a feature length, obviously, there's more at stake. And so that's where, you go through the extensive process of interviewing and vetting people, because you want to mitigate surprises in your shoot. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of preface that shorts, more opportunity to test, to test and work with new talent, come up with new ideas. That's the great thing about shorts. And then with features, it's just locking them down, So.
Yes, Karen.
on that point with Jason, that's a fantastic thing. That even though I've done features, I don't see it as now I've done features, I will never do another short. In fact, shorts are very much a part of my resetting, rebooting, and experimenting with new crew, new heads, like being more experimental on that. That's why we make short films. It's because, again, it's a chance to do it on a smaller scale and to try out new relationships and to further your own skills in a different way, because you can't sometimes afford to do that on something larger.
I think that's a realization we come to further on in our career, is that short films are an experimental playground rather than just small films. I think that's we sometimes start out that way, where we're just making small movies, but further on we go, we realize this is experimental. This is our playground for that, and I really respect that, because that's where I'm coming from now myself. Alex, you had your hand up.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. I was just gonna say to this point too, like, because you asked that question about shorts and features, to this discussion about relationships, scale. So I was just gonna say scale, like, is a big thing that just keeps coming up when you look at like shorts and features. When you're asking that question, it's so in this instance, just think like, you know, on a short, if you're doing a short, like you do the short, just think when you're making this short, do I want to work again with these people in the future, right? If it's a short, like you don't, once you do production, you know, it's a much, God, for lack of better words, a shorter lived experience, right? Whereas feature, like you're going to be with these, like, just think, do you want to work with these people for a long time? Like, it's not just when you finish the movie, it's for at least indies. I don't know, maybe Karen could speak to the studio stuff, but it's like, once you finish the movie, it's, you know, you're going to be distributing, you're going to be festivals, you're going to be seeing these people still after you finish the movie for quite a while. So you want to work with people that you like, that you get along with, that you work well with.
This is something we spoke to in the producers panel, which was that especially when working with the director, you're committing to a year, maybe 2 years, maybe even longer about working with those people. And Jason, Kristen had the nicest things to say about the working process with you, so don't worry. But you're essentially, and they were quite agreement, you're essentially marrying this person for an amount of time, and that's a process and something you have to ask, I think, as a director, with any department head you're going to spend a year working with on a feature. Do I want to work with this person for a year? How is that relationship going to go? And I think sometimes we have stars in our eyes working with the best technician. And sometimes the best technician isn't the right person for that. And that's something we have to come to that understanding. Before we move on to the next question, Alex, you should watch our cinematography panel. You'll learn a lot about lighting and framing and all that stuff. It was a really great conversation with two really great DPs. Not just to plug it, but plugging it. Yes.
Sorry,
Jason.
can I just I just wanted to also chime in. When you're bringing on a key creative, also looking at their relationships as well, because you may want to bring on somebody with more experience, because then they may you're bringing on their first AC, second AC, you know, their team that they've developed, right, onto a long form feature, and so you're hoping that the DP that you bring on, for example, can vet for his or her team, right? Because you can't possibly do that for every single person. You're looking for that trust to go forward. Yeah. So I just want to put that out there, that it's important that they can also vet their own team.
Yes, that's a great point. Let's move on to the next question. When breaking down a script to shoot, how does this process differ between shorts and features? And how different is planning a short versus planning a feature? And what have you learned about this process concerning both? For this, let's start with Karen.
With a short film, again, usually because it's on my dime, I don't have a lot of money. So sometimes that breakdown will be done by me, you know, like as far as like, you know, I can pretty well say, we're going to, you know, if it's a 2-day shoot or something like that, it's like, okay, we've got these 2 locations. This is how it's going to get broken down. So it's a little bit simpler, hopefully. If it's a big feature, the breakdown is done by your first assistant director. So a lot of that planning and that is you going back and forth with that first AD, who is also working with the producer, because again, you're trying to figure out how much money do you have, how much time do you have, and just, you know, all of that, and any of the choices that you can make as a director to either help that or make it worse. That's my job. It's like, yeah, how did I just make your job so much worse in this moment? So I try to avoid that.
Let's move on to Jason.
Yeah, so let me see. In terms of, I think breaking down a script to shoot, I think the process is the same. You know, you have to be mindful of shooting ratio and how much time you have on the day, in terms of determining how many shots you have. Actually, one thing that I learned that I discovered with a feature is I can only do around 16 shots per day.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I can push it to about 18 to 20, but these are like if I include little inserts and things like that. But basically, it's about 15 to 20 minutes per shot. And at first I was like, no, there's no way, even with a real, there's no way. But then, you know, on a feature length, you're able to test that, and it's the formula is part of the experience of your crew and how much equipment you're bringing around. But yeah, that was one thing that I learned with a feature length was, wow, it's really this rule is important, and the more shots you have in a day, the more you're going to exhaust your crew. So you have to kind of start prioritizing what's really important for endurance purposes, especially on a feature. So so in terms of planning your shots, just knowing that, knowing how long can you endure for a feature is important, because a short you can try to push it to a 16-hour day. Oh, I don't want to do that ever, but you know, if you wanted to, you can, but you can't do 16-hour days on a feature for a month. Nobody will like you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Alex, same question to you.
Yeah, I don't think I really have much to say on this question. I don't like in terms of like breaking down a script and stuff like that. You mean like with like that you do with like the AD or
whatever your process is?
Yeah. I mean, usually that's a process where I mean, you're like Karen said, it can be a process where it's because it's a short, you're doing it by yourself. You sort of know your needs, and I think definitely with the short, I would be able to do that just with the producers. I wouldn't need an AD for a 10-page thing. But then I guess with a feature, it's something where we break it down with the AD and the second AD and things like that, and we kind of get into the nitty gritty, and it needs more planning for sure.
Alex, do you start looking at page count? Is that what do you have a pages per day, or is it more like, how do you balance it when you're working?
God, that same question to you. what like, what do you mean?
Oh yeah, because I was thinking Jason just came back, but you know, he said number of shots, but I've always tended to work with number of pages per day. So then your AD, like say you're on a feature, the AD will be like, oh, it's a 4-page day, that's really light. Like we should be sitting around the 7 pages a day, you know. And if you're on an MOW, you're looking at maybe 10 or 12 pages a day, right? Like, so it's a page count rather than a shot count. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, for me, it's that's a really, really challenging question for me, because I think it's a combination of shots, pages, but then also performances. Because then I can think of a day that we shot, there was just 2 pages, but I knew there was, what was it, like 5 characters, and they were all kind of bound, like it was just a dialogue heavy bouncing scene. They came in with a car, and then they're talking at the door, and then there's a lot of movements and everything. So I just knew like we're and then I knew the performances were maybe not where they needed to be yet. So I knew there'd be a lot of adjustments with that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know that.
So
I know that from an
different.
AD's perspective, that's a malleable question, because I've been on shoots where, you know, I look at a 4-page scene on the call sheet, and that's going to take only 4.5 minutes to shoot each take, and I look at a 1/8 of a page scene, and I know that one line of action is going to take us 5 minutes per shot, and that's going to take its own amount of time with its own amount of setup. So I do think that page count becomes a very I know we hold to page count a lot as earlier in our careers as well, because we're told the average 1 page 1 minute and screen time. I don't find it translates that easily when we're actually in production, and that's an interesting balance that we have to learn on their own. Jason.
Yeah, I just wanted to answer Karen's question about page count. For me, what I learned was like 5 to 7 pages is what I can do. Yeah, realistically, depending upon how much dialogue there is. So, you know, if there's a stunt or intimacy scene, obviously it's going to take a bit longer, right? During the pandemic, oh my goodness, it was more, we were prioritizing safety than efficiency. So it was things like gargling and things like that, masks and all that stuff took time, wiping things down. So,
and you shot in a heat wave. Good Lord, you were in full on.
You're the trifecta.
Yeah.
I did also during the hottest day of the year last year.
Yeah.
It's extreme filmmaking. Let's move on to the next question here. And this is a question that I personally find a really interesting one, because it kind of gets to the nature of pre-production, and like I think the purpose of what you as a director or you as a producer feel like the role of pre-production is. How do you know when you're ready to move into production? Is it a looming deadline, or is it something more organic? And let's start with Jason on this one.
A deadline, I could say. I'm deadline driven. So if we, you know, when you're planning to go into production, you usually plan a few months ahead of time, right? And unless if there is an earthquake or something, heaven and earth needs to move, you know, you commit to that deadline, because there's so many moving parts that would need to shift in order to reach a new deadline. So it's just better to creatively solve the problem in order to meet the goals of production. So yeah, that's all I can say. I mean, I'm sure all of us have anecdotes that we can tell about how something moved production sideways, and we have to kind of say, okay, how can we put it back on track to hit our first day of production, right? Like we lose a location, that's a perfect one, right? Or
who hasn't lost a location? I don't know a single person.
11th hour, it's like
right.
Yeah. So
Alex, same question to you. When do you go to camera? How do you know you're ready?
Yeah, reiterating Jason's point, deadlines are your friend. I definitely need deadlines. Oh yeah, you're your evil friend, sure. But yeah, definitely deadlines are hugely important. I would say, you know, it's funny, like you have say you're 1 month off the first day of principal photography, and there's just always going to be, like, if you don't have a deadline, you're just always going to just push things, punt them. We can do them later. You're going to be 1 month off principal photography, and you're going to lose your production designer. You're going to lose this person. You're going to need to put out this fire. It's always going to be this. It's just like that's, and then everyone's just going to go into overdrive, and you're going to make it happen. And that's why you have that deadline. Is you just have to. It sucks. You just have to choose that day, and then unless there's like some, you know, COVID mega thing, you know, that derails you and you can't, you just have to push. But yeah, set deadlines.
Karen, when are you ready to go to camera? How do you know?
Oh, I never know. I'm never ready. It's always to me on my indies, it's always location driven. So you got this warehouse for this day. that's the day we're shooting. You know what I mean? We kind of work backward with that. If you've got something very specific, with Evangeline, I know it was the 1 month between pilot season starting and everyone being on hiatus. So I knew that was the month. That's all you could possibly do. On the studio one, they dictate that. Same with MOWs. They pretty well are like, this is our broadcast date, or this is what we've got locked in. You're off to the races. I literally was on, I think they gave me the job, and then within, I think 2 weeks, they were like, you're on the plane, you're off. You know what I mean? But that was it. In 3 months in Winnipeg, there I was. So
I can't imagine 3 months in Winnipeg.
I'm from Brandon, so I can't imagine that. So
I'm sorry for what I've said. I think this is a great time to share an anecdote about this exact thing that early in my career, I was told, watch the BTS for Magnolia. And Paul Thomas Anderson has this whole statement about pre-production where he says, you begin pre-production when you generate a giant list of questions, and you are finished pre-production when you've answered all those questions. And I think that's always stuck with me, because even Mamet talks about like the plastic elements of production in on directing, and like you're ready to go to camera when you've asked all your questions about your plastic elements, you have all your answers about them, and now you've got everything lined up. But when we work in indie, and I've got this location and it's only available on this day, so I guess that's when principal begins. And so I guess we're going to line up every other location because that's the most important one, and I guess we're going to try to get all the equipment by that date because that's the most important one. And oh no, this actor's not available now on that date, so we're going to have to replace them. Like those questions start answering themselves that way. So I've always found that to be an interesting dichotomy.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever had that luxury of, and esoterically it's all going to be ready. It's almost like, holy crap, we're going. It's that. It always feels like that. It never feels like have I answered all my questions? Do I have more? No. Just
let us all have that luxury one day.
Yeah. It always looks like one of those cartoon characters where you're like, holy, you know what I mean? Like, and that the look of horror on your face the whole time. So yeah.
It's the 1,000-yard stare the entire time. I feel that. That's a very real film mode.
Yeah.
So this is a question that might come a bit loaded for some people, especially in Vancouver. No names being named for this, but we've all had this experience. How early in the process do you like to produce your shot list, and how does this differ between shorts and features? And to add to this, has this changed? Has this changed as you've come through your career? And if so, how? And let's open this one with Alex.
Can you say why it's a loaded question first?
Why is it a loaded question, or what the question is again?
No. You didn't you start with saying it's a loaded question?
Well, it's a loaded question because I in a number of positions in the work that I do have arrived on set and there isn't a shot list. So not everybody generates a shot list in pre-production, and so I asked this question without trying to illuminate anyone in particular with regards to that. But I think because of that, I think it's a genuinely interesting question to ask, especially the part about like, as you've gone through your career, have you decided to do this differently? So like, at what point is the shot list generated for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say once you have, you can do it at any point. You can start a shot list at any point. But usually with me, it's the shooting script that when I see that shooting script, then I like, flying wings, and then that's, then producers, trying to feel uncomfortable and for the next day, like to almost producing team, check in, make sure that the bandwidth that they need to prep a shot list for those first days, and make sure that the AD and everyone's in because shot lists all of these pieces are critical, and they're super important. They help you on set. The AD is going to plan the day and the times and everything based around shot lists. So you don't want to be flying like that. So these are learning lessons. And then after like a few days on the this last feature, on the weekend, I just compiled the next week of shot lists, and so you got ahead of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So get ahead of it.
Get ahead of it. Okay, Jason, same question.
Oh, this is a great question. So I'm gonna address it two ways. I think so. Ideally, I would love to have my shot list done by the tech scout. When I meet up with the key heads and I show them and I walk them through the location. That's ideal. And I'll have my shot list for scenes with stunts or intimacy done ahead of time. But like what Alex mentioned, you just don't have the bandwidth, especially on a feature. You have so many scenes, and you have to prioritize which ones are more important than the other. So in general, with Golden Delicious, I was producing shot lists an hour before I had to show up on the day of shooting, and I think my first AD, bless his soul, Matt Hurst, was going to kill me at some point because he would be the first person to see the shot list an hour before he had to set up, before he had to plan the day and do the meeting. But I always try to have a shot list, so that we have some way to measure our day, and I know that I can also grab all the coverage as well. So yeah. Ideally by the tech scout, but most likely an hour before everybody shows up on set. So that's my experience so far. I'm trying to change that.
And Karen, same question to you.
Oh, you're gonna hate my answer.
Oh no.
I don't shot list. So yeah. So I've always been, my script is very much a shot list though, so I do know what I'm doing. Once I'm in polish on the script, regardless of whether I wrote it or otherwise, I do know what I'm going to shoot. I tend to, it's all kind of in my head in a weird way. I have worked without shot lists, but then on the studio film, I would do the shot list like half an hour before I showed up on set and just email it to everyone, to say like, here's what we're planning on doing. I tend to be, we've got it all planned out. My job is to say like, how long do I have for the scene? It's terrible. How long do I have for the scene? And my AD will like, you've got an hour and a half. It's like, all right then, here's our master. Here's what I mean? Like I unless it's a special where we have something planned, like it's a big stunt or it's a big CGI thing or something on a larger scale, you kind of know what you're. I know that sounds terrible. It sounds very esoteric what I'm thinking of, but sometimes it's like, okay, we've got half an hour for this thing. Okay, I'm gonna bang it off this way. It's gonna be one or here it goes. So I tend to my way of shot listing is almost walking through the set right at the beginning. I show up early with my AD, my DP. We walk through it. I mean, like I walk through the set and say like, I'm thinking mastering here. Here's the coverage. These are the main shots I want, and off we go. So that's my tend to.
Yeah. Jason.
I just realized that there's a second part to your question, which is how has it changed from shorts to features, right?
Yes, and also over the course of your career.
Oh yeah.
Over the course, yeah. When I first started, I used to have storyboards and shot lists. I went through the roof with delivering all this stuff, like Lions in Waiting. It's a hockey film, and I storyboarded so much of that. And then I realized that the things shift so quickly that you just have to know the intention of your shots, right? And how and you want to make your shots kind of have sticky endings and sticky beginnings so they can cut together in the editing room. And so with Golden Delicious, that's where I realized I could dispense. I could be a bit more esoteric, like what Karen said, just kind of know the intention, but not commit fully to each shot because like storyboard, because it's just going to be too tedious and cost too much money in order to do that.
Mm-hmm.
and that just comes with experience. That feeling, right? Of I think we got this. So.
Jason, that's a good point. It's the idea of knowing the intent of that scene. So if it's a transition scene, for example, where it's not meaty and, there's like, for example, if it's a dialogue driven scene and the characters aren't going to be doing a lot of walking and talking, doing a huge shot list of that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. I want to see the rehearsal. I'll block us out. And at that point, I kind of do it only makes sense, like the camera coming from this angle. And from that, you sort of pick and choose what you're going to do for coverage, right? But unless you actually know what the intent is for the scene, then that is a lot of the work. It's coming up with why are you doing this? What is it in proportion to the rest of it? Like, you're not going to milk every scene. Sometimes they are transitions. You're getting a character from A to B, and you do not need to shot list that. They're running down a hallway. That's kind of where else are you going to put the camera? It's that sort of thing. So there's it's almost, it is experience, but and how is it transitioned? Basically, I was even loosier when I started, and now on this one, because it was an $8 million budget, I did the shot list as a safety for everyone, just so that so it was already what I knew what I was going to shoot, but at least we had a game plan, and I would just generate that a couple of hours before.
Mm-hmm. What's interesting to me, because I've worked a lot as an AD, is this is the most horrifying answer I could have got from all of you guys. But no, it's understandable, because this is part of the idea of director-driven projects, is the idea that it's director-driven, and the choices that you make about how to engage in shot listing or how to engage in shooting. Your crew is there; they're going to do the work they're going to do. So it's interesting to see how people approach that. To go back to Mamet in On Directing, he talks about the only job of a director in pre-production is to generate the shot list. Everything else comes from that. Yeah. No, it's an interesting dichotomy, because what he's talking about is that, you generate the shot list and then it gets handed off to all of the department heads. And so then in the shot, then you're building the mise en scène with every department head, and they're asking the question, well, what location does this shot take place in? Okay, well, what furniture is in that location? What color is that furniture? And it all kind of builds out from there. So it's interesting to see kind of different approaches to this. Yes, Jason.
Could I add that the pandemic really affected us? We were supposed to shoot in a high school, and we didn't have access to a high school until almost on the day, right? So we couldn't rehearse. Many things that we took for granted before the pandemic, we didn't have access to at all. And so, how could you do a proper shot list when you don't even have access to the location until on the day? Like, you have pictures, you have to use your imagination, and you have to use your gut feeling. So I think, that's where you have to dispense with the traditional shot list storyboards and go, what is the intent of this scene here, right? And how can we give us more options in the editing room, so that we're not trapped into a certain way of editing. That's what the pandemic has taught me. So.
Absolutely. And actually it's funny because you were in a high school, and I was in a high school too, for basically the beginning parts of it, which meant that we couldn't get into the school until 4 p.m., which meant we started with night shoots. And of the 4 weeks that I worked, 3 of those were 5 p.m. to 7 a.m., which was awesome. I felt awesome at the end of that. But so I absolutely understand that. And also, I started my first, I'd never done this before. Like, it was full cheer choreography, right? So I had 2 or 3 full days of cheer choreography that, we had basically 3 cameras. And so my shot list would have been useless. I had no, we were, the choreography was happening. You're going to shoot the hell out of it, just because that's the nature of it. And you want to give yourself as many options as you can. I had some big ideas for what I wanted to do, just to get the coverage that we wanted to. But ultimately, with a big, I think there was 4 cheer choreographed, 4 teams, and basically from different eras. And we had to, there's only so much planning you can do, other than you're just going to roll it and you're going to shoot it for 13 hours, right? Like that. Sort of how we put it.
I would also just add that just for people listening out there, that prep is never wasted. If you're doing shot lists, great. I think it's always good just to get the juices flowing. And I actually like I do see value in shot lists. So to your horror comment, Avi, like there is definitely value in shot listing your scenes, and that gives it also, it relates to your assistant director, your AD. It's going to put them calm if they can see that they see a plan for this scene. They see, oh, okay, you have some coverage here, you have a wide, you have you have the master, whatever, then you have some inserts. Okay, those inserts, they're going to be fast, you just need a couple of those. They're going to be able to process that. They're going to be able to like think about time. Okay, they're looking at their watch. It helps you, and it does help you. But yes, to Karen's point, you're going to be what you need to know. The biggest thing is adaptability. You're going to have a shot list, and you're going to come into on set, and then, oh, I was going to put the camera here, and then your DP is going to say, no, you can't put the camera there. And then you're going to say to the actor, okay, you're going to walk here, like you're doing blocking, you're going to cross through that thing, and then the DP is going to say, no, the lighting looks terrible. Like, look at it looks terrible. They can't walk through there. So then you're going to have to look at your shot list. And if you're stuck on like, no, this is what we're doing, then suddenly you have a huge problem. So you have, and this is, I mean, this goes for filmmaking like everywhere. It's just adaptability is such a big part of it.
Yeah. And it's the speed of what you're working at. Like I remember reading, I think it was Soderbergh, who basically said that his shot listing or his prepping was literally doing the blocking, but he has a stick. So apparently he walks around, and wherever he puts the stick, that's where the camera goes. So you're looking at different angles because, you know, in my case, I had a 9-person main cast. So it was a big ensemble cast that I'm also dealing with. So we'd run rehearsals, and you know, you're doing your blocking to begin with. And a lot of it was just me walking around saying, what's the best place I can put the camera, at least for the master? And I had 2 cameras at any given time. So it's like, where are we going to do this? And there's no shot list that could have helped me at that point, because people were like, you know, all the cast is doing different things. So it's like, where's my best place to put this? It would basically be until I'm in that environment and I'm looking around and seeing what the lighting looks like, seeing how the cast is interacting with the location, the environment. That's sort of where I'm creating as I go. But I know the script inside and out. So it's not like, you know, I'm not, it sounds like you're winging it, but you're not winging it. You know, it's that delicate balance of kind of winging it.
All I can say to this is the earlier you get a shot list to the AD, the less you're going to have that lunchtime conversation about what shots are we cutting. Because that's the conversation no one wants to have. And everybody should just be able to go to lunch. You shouldn't be having that whole like head in the hands conversation. But it's really interesting to see everybody's different styles on this. Speaking about production, let's move into production. So this is a question that
I've never cut a shot. So there you go.
Well, I mean, when you don't have a shot list, it's hard to cut a shot.
Exactly.
You know, that's a life hack right there.
Yeah.
So this is one that I think is maybe even less in the purview of a director, but because we're all kind of producers and we're all kind of ADs in indie, how do you determine the number of shooting days, and how do you approach the difference between the number of days of production? You know, with a longer shooting schedule for features, with a shorter shooting schedule for shorts. So how does this approach work for you guys? We'll open with Jason on this one.
Okay, so how do you determine the appropriate number of shooting days? Well, I think it goes back to page count. I think that you know, we touched on if you know, if we're doing 5 to 7 pages a day, and depending on the complexity of the scenes, then you can get an idea of how many shooting days is required. Now, so it's a conversation between you and the producer. So like with Golden Delicious, I believe it was 24, 25 days is what I had determined. And then Kristen mentioned 20 days is what we had budgeted for, or 20 days is what we have money for. So, you know, you have to work with that. And then you start to prioritize the important scenes that require a bit more finesse. And then the other scenes, you know, what can you do with just very simple coverage? There was, and it's interesting. It's interesting once your first AD pushes you, and forces you to evaluate the intent of each scene. You'll notice that some transitionary scenes don't require a lot of coverage. It could be just a one shot, for example, and just moving the blocking around to get what you need. That was so that happened a couple of times where we had I had 9 shots and I only had 15 minutes left, and then I knew the intent of the shot, and I covered everything in I distilled it into one shot and rearranged the blocking, and I was able to get everything that I needed for that scene, and we got it in 15 minutes, and I was just incredible. I was just amazed by that. So it's just like, that's why I go back to saying know the intent of your scenes, because that's going to stay. It's like we're in it together as a family. This is a group effort, and I can't be exploiting other people in order to make this film make. It's just not cool, especially today. So especially with everybody kind of with the pandemic going on. So that's my approach. And yeah, just think creatively and then see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Same question to Karen.
Yeah, it's always budget related. You know, I think that the number of days is always dependent. I'm always told how many days I've actually got. So that's the thing. Like on the studio film, they said you've got was it 20 days? I think it was 20 days. And you know, on my feature on Curse of Willow Song, I was told I had 14. So there you go. I've got 14. I'm going to do it. So that's sort of the, like, I find that I will take as much time as is available to me, but I tend to be a 10-hour day kind of person, unless the studio has paid for 12 and then you're going to shoot for 12. So then I'll fill that up. So it's I have a short attention span. So I'm usually like, when I'm done, right? It's like, oh, do I have to run that again? Right. So anyway, just me.
Alex, to you.
Yeah, I'm going to echo Karen on this. It's budget. The budget will dictate so much of your production schedule, because you know, when I was shooting this last movie, when we were on set, I was like thinking in my head, like, what is the difference between this and like Hollywood and like, you know, all these sort of things. And I came up with time. Time is like time, toys, team, and talent. So it's sort of these things, like the more money you get, the more you get to spend in these in getting, you know, a bigger team, doing more things, I guess better talent, or just more A-listers, not necessarily talent, that's not the right word. And then yeah, toys. Like I was talking to my DP, and he just said that my DP on this last movie was just he's an excellent DP, but we didn't have the budget for some of the toys that he wanted, and the toys that he wanted would have got us through. You know, he's like, Alex, I don't have a techno crane, or I don't have blimps, you know, for lighting this forest back here. Like, he would explain to me everything that he wants to do, and how now we have to think creatively. So then you have to think creatively about how to, okay, I don't have that budget, so how am I going to sort of maybe not hide, but how am I going to creatively get around that so it looks like we still have budget and it still looks amazing. So yeah, those are, I think budget is time. God, like, you know, you would love 30 days, but no, you get 21 days to shoot this. But maybe you need 30 days to really shoot it right. But that's just, yeah.
I like the 4 T's. That's great. Karen, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, on Alex's point, it's so funny because when I was so nervous doing my first studio film, and I had an actor give me the best, one of my favorite actors, actually. Yeah, he gave me the best. Oh yeah, it's David Lewis. He was talking to me right before, and he said to me, you know what? No matter how big the budget is, there's never enough, and that is absolutely 100% true. Because no matter how much money you think I was looking at this budget and thinking, wow, I've shot films based on their craft services, like that is how much this budget actually is. The expectations are so much higher. So it's there's always less than what you wanted to do. So if it's a studio film, I can't get away with some of my cool indie tricks where I'm going to do whatever it is. They want the value on the screen. So all of a sudden you're dealing with you can't just have like a simple little ending. It's got to be like a climactic ending of some sort that actually works. So of course you never have enough money. So I was thinking to the other cheer movies, we found out we had 3 weeks of cheer camp to get all of the choreography ready for the cheerleaders. Well, the other Bring It Ons had 5 weeks, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden it's like, and yet the expectation is that you're still going to be delivering at whatever it is. So there is no budget where you're like, I'm comfy, this is good. It's just, oh my God, what are we not getting this time round? Where you needed the techno crane and you can afford it. Like now you've got it, but you can only afford it for 2 days. It's like, it's that sort of thing. There's never enough. And so
we can always spend that money somewhere.
Absolutely. And it's never enough. They've always undercut you on some level. So
there's no saving money on a film. If anybody's saving money, they could be spending it elsewhere. Okay, let's move on to the next question. This is going to be more towards the earlier parts of feature careers, but what are some of the realizations about production that you came to when working on a feature that didn't seem apparent when working on shorts? Let's start with Alex on this one.
Something that was not apparent on a feature, but it was apparent on a short?
Other way around.
Oh, something that was apparent on a short, but not apparent on a feature. Can we come back to me actually?
Sure, we can come back to you.
It's funny because you're leaving me to the last, and I'm getting now like I get to think about it. But yeah,
I'll leave you to the end. Jason, were there some realizations about production that you came to when working on a feature that you hadn't been apparent when working on shorts?
I think exhaustion is the biggest thing. Like I didn't realize how exhausted I could be like a week after. I didn't realize how my body responds to stress. There were a couple of nights where I could not sleep, and I just could not do the regular things I normally do, and I regularly work out and eat well, and I was just surprised by how my body responded to that. And I really wanted to do a great job, be there for the director, but I was exhausted, like just. And so endurance is one thing that is a big difference between shooting shorts to features, and that's where all your prep work comes into play, right? If you prep a lot, then you can count on your prep work. You can go in and do your shot list an hour before because you've understand everything there is to know about that scene, and so you can wing it as per se, right? But if you don't do that prep work, then it's a different story, and then you just end up being exhausted and aimless. So that's the biggest thing that I could say.
The thing we forget to prep is our bodies. That is an absolute truism I've seen across the industry, as people don't think about. You have to be there. You have to be there for the production. Your body isn't used to doing a 12-hour to 16-hour day. People who I've seen start with PAing often fall off just because they can't take the days that long, and like that's something you tend to see a lot. Karen, same question.
Oh yeah, Julia Kwan gave me her advice to me on my first feature was eat protein. Really protein, and you're so right, Jason. It really is just endurance, because no matter how prepped you actually are, just the physical exhaustion. I had never done 13-hour night shoots like that, like what I did, which was 3 weeks out of the 4 weeks were all night shoots. And I don't sleep well during the day. So you're rolling back to the condo at like 7 a.m. And I'd sleep for a couple of hours, and at noon I'd be like, oh, wide awake, and my circadian rhythm just never adapted to that. And so every night I was getting 4 hours or so, and it's like, well, might as well do my shot list now, I guess. I'm half dead anyway. And so and I remember there was one night where, you know, you're driving back and just the pure what is it, sleep impairment. You know, you're driving back, and I would have the air condition cranked and the window open, trying to stay awake so I could just drive back to the condo. And you forget, just again, doing a sprint on a short film, like a couple of days, as compared to doing like a month or 2 months or however long that is of production. It's just physically grueling.
Mm-hmm. Alex, let's come back to you.
That's the perfect answer right there, is endurance. I guess adding to that, I would just say, like, shorts, you know, you make a short, you come up with an idea, you get some friends together, or you go apply for funding, you get the grant, and you go make the short. Maybe you do it in 3-4 weeks, a month, then you're done. With features, the scale is different. So just really keep that in mind. If you're doing a feature, do something that you're passionate about. Do something like the project excites you. It doesn't have to be the project you wrote, but you read the script and you're like, oh God, I gotta get this, needs to get made. And you're gonna spend 2 years. You're gonna be 2, 3, whatever, how many years with that project, with that team, with that idea. So just keep that in mind again. And I would also come back to adaptability. You know, the script is going to change, the story is going to change, people are going to come in and out, your team members are going to change. So you have to be adaptable. You have to be, you know, you can't be too rigid. But I guess the important part to remember is just like, what is it about this project that cannot be lost, of why you came on this project in the first place? Like, what is that core idea that like brought you, that struck you about this project, that like you need to see it realized, and make sure that your team does not lose that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Endurance, we don't talk about it enough. We really don't. I've seen a lot of those the last week being a huge problem, or people dropping off. Note about protein: keep Cliff Bars in your pockets. I cannot stress enough how, like, the Snickers commercial is absolutely true half the time. We're not eating enough, we're not feeding ourselves enough, we're not exercising enough. Yes, Karen.
But also, if you are loading up on carbs, you are not going to be happy on this, because
True.
as you do, you're going to be so sleepy, which was Julia's point, which was eat the nuts, eat the, you know, basically make sure that the protein will sustain you. Don't become a caffeine addict, because if that happens too, you're running on ups and downs. You want to actually keep stable for the, you know, sounds terrible. You're running a marathon, you gotta feed the body, you gotta do this thing. But yeah,
no, it's true, especially considering how much caffeine and sugar is sitting out in front of you on a film set. Typically, like, those are the two big crashers. You're not gonna make it through if you're just sustaining on that. Adrenaline alone will not get you through 4 weeks of shooting.
It's incredible to think of. I don't even get it, why we eat so crappy on film sets. Like, we have all these like things that are, you know, we should be thinking, I don't know. That's a whole nother topic, like nutrition and film sets and like merging.
Let's talk about it. Let's have this conversation now. Because I mean, I'll give you an answer from a producer standpoint. There's 2 reasons why food is so bad on set. It's budget and it's time. When we're in indie, especially, craft service is often a job that we cannot get too easily. And as much as like we can get catering brought in, craft service comes in 2 tiers. You either get the same tier as you get on larger service projects, or you get the smaller tier, which is somebody ran to Costco the day before. And when somebody runs to Costco, what they're going to do is they're going to buy the snacks,
the muffins.
Yeah.
Muffins.
And when you get the other,
those Costco muffins, sorry,
because they're too big. They're just frankly too big, but also they're so cheap. So how could you not buy two cases of muffins, right? Like, if you didn't get 2 cases of muffins and then cut them into quarters, like, is it really a film set? And this has all changed with COVID, with like the need to individually wrap things as well, which made it more difficult than, you know, when you're on a service shoot and they have nice food set out in craft service for you to pick from, or you know, after Hot Snack now lives there, and like, that's always nice. But there is a big difference between having somebody there who's cooking solely for there to be stuff at craft service, not for catering at all, not even for sandwiches or hot snack, but just making sure there's something high in protein. And you're absolutely right, Karen. Like, it's, if you're loading up on carbs, you're going to crash. If you're loading up on sugar, you're going to crash. If you're loading up on caffeine, you're going to crash. And Alex, I wish we had enough money in Indy to do better food at craft service.
Well, yeah, that's the weird thing though, is I think in my case we had the money to do this, but that's what I mean. It's like maybe we should have put more money in this last film into nutrition and into food, because I just have to say that, like, you know, when that hot snack comes around, we did have hot snack, we did have someone doing hot snack, but when that hot snack comes around and it's like hot dogs with, you know, cheese and noodles and all this like cheesy and crumbs, and I don't know what it was called, but like when you eat that, it, you know, it's not going to sustain you, and it's not even going to probably hit the right synapses that make you think well. So I don't know. This is, I don't know. I don't know. Nutrition is a big point for me. But it's just so funny how we kind of put it to the side. Yeah. I just want to, I'll just finish by at that point by just saying that I think you can really do it. Indies can do it so well. Like, I would say the food was better on my first feature when I had my friend Connor, who came in, and he was cooking just delicious, like really nutritious meals, and like, yeah, and you get that whole, like, you know, the whole family like together, and people take lunch and everyone's eating together, and they're eating a big bowl of chili, and that's sustaining and that's nutritious. So that's the thing, is that we can be doing it. We can be doing it right, whether it's like a volunteerism or whether it's, you know, big budget. So there's no excuse for nutrition.
Jason, you had something you wanted to bring?
Yeah, since we're on health, can we also talk about COVID?
Yes, let's talk about COVID.
That's the one thing. So, you know, we had some calls with COVID in pre-production, but fortunately nobody got sick. And of course, if you on a short, if somebody gets sick, especially the director or key crew, you can always like postpone it. It's small. But on a bigger feature, it's like a train that's moving, right? And so it becomes a challenge. Yeah, I mean, as you know, Avi, a few weeks.
I am not editing software.
I got COVID a few weeks ago, and that was what's it called? It really I had to stop everything, right? And recover. And I can't imagine if I was on a film set and then having to say, sorry, we'll have to cancel this on the day. And then who's going to pick up the pieces, right? On a feature, especially in indie. So just like that's something, that contingency plan is, I think, really important going forward now. If you want to do features, like, so how are you going to deal with that if it comes up? Because technically you're supposed to go into self-isolation. And all work stops if you're, well, not all work, but how can you shoot when you're in bed, right?
And that also starts to lean into difficulty with regards to like when you start losing crew because of that. If or in indie, a really big challenge. You know, I went from shooting 3 or 4 things a year to shooting one thing during all of COVID, and like that was a major difference and a huge culture shock. But the reality for me was you've got people who aren't working as much, and so you can't ask as much when in the favor category that we typically have to in indie. And then we've got the reality of you know, you've got people who are working service shoots during the week and working indie or commercials on the weekends, and you can't really guarantee the crew safety that you normally would want to be able to, especially if you could control it effectively. Even the service shoots can't control it. Like, the best they can do is if they get a test positive, they can have everybody bubbled off and cordoned and deal with it. So it really becomes this huge like difficulty, especially shooting within the last 2 years, that I think, some crews have found ways to manage, but I don't think any of us have real answers for it. And I would like to know, how has this affected you guys during the course of COVID? Let's continue this conversation about COVID. Let's go on to Karen. How did COVID affect you, and how did you deal with COVID during shooting with COVID in this period?
Well, I was planning on shooting nothing during COVID, so that was my until the. But that said, I ended up doing two. I did a music video, basically a one evening music video. We're still in editing on that one, but it was outdoor. So I rented the Labyrinth at the Van Dusen Gardens, and
Lovely.
because it was outdoor, we kept it really small because I couldn't afford to do a big elaborate shoot, because again, you want to minimize everything, and I kept it outside, basically that. Because it was a studio shoot, I think they spent over $1 million on it. I have no idea how, as an indie, I could have competed with that. We were being tested in some cases like 3 times a week, and we had, basically it was a lot of, and because we were under NBC Universal, they had stricter protocol than, we were filming in Winnipeg, but they had stricter protocol than what Winnipeg was even allowing. So I had to sign agreements that basically were that I wasn't doing weekend stuff. I did nothing to endanger me. Essentially, it treated me like I was in my own little special bubble wrap. So as a director, in that, because of the size of the budget and because of what I was doing, I was basically told, like anything that's at risk, I shouldn't be doing. And, that's a personal responsibility thing, because, the whole show's dependent on my health, which is really scary.
Now, Alex, you also shot an indie feature during COVID. So how did that affect you guys?
Yeah, we were shooting in August, last August. And I think Jason just mentioned it too. It wasn't just COVID, it was a heat wave. It wasn't nice. There were some days that really were just, we were inside a barn loft. It was super hot, and we had to be masked, and, stuffy, uncomfortable. So people needed to take breaks and things like this. I guess, it's really tricky. I don't know how else to say it other than it was scary. The COVID factor was scary. It was probably one of our biggest, concerns during the shoot, was just the idea that, on Sunday of 1 week, your sound recordist was at a party over the weekend or whatever, whoever, and someone there had got COVID. So then he needs to get tested immediately. It's Monday morning, he needs to get tested. And then if he tests positive, then we need to test our whole crew. We need to, we need to stop shooting, and that's going to hugely affect your production schedule. So those sort of things do happen. We were lucky that we dodged a couple bullets there, and I don't know what to really say other than it can really, for an indie shoot, that can be like a death blow. Yeah. Hopefully not, but
it was a difficult time for all.
Sorry, was that a pun? Were you punning on the death blow or no?
No, God, no.
We're getting morbid. Jason, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
I think we were lucky in that Telefilm had mandated certain protocols to keep us safe. Like we could not have more than 40 people on our set, including cast and background and crew. So we had to adhere to that. There were also certain insurance requirements that we had to get for COVID, just in case that happened. So fortunately, nobody got sick. We had some indirect effects of COVID, like a loss of a location, for example, because of restrictions. But yeah, nobody got sick, fortunately. So I think for an indie, the best way, you have to set aside a portion of your budget, if you can, for testing and contingency planning. So yeah, that's it. You're better off to do so than not. So.
Let's move away from COVID for a bit here now. What does a typical shooting day look like for you? Obviously, during COVID. This is a very different conversation. But what does your dream typical shooting day look like? And was this like, does this differ between a short and a feature? Is there a major difference in that kind of world? Let's open with Karen for this one.
Oh, did you say, is there a dream day like that?
Like, what is a normal day that you would like? What's the day you'd like to have? Like if you were structuring that day, and even how does that compare to the day that you get?
Oh, yeah, they're pretty typical. I mean, I like to basically, oh God, my preference is that this is a split day, where I show up at noon. That's my happy, like noon to noon. It's very happy. It is not me showing up at, 4 p.m. so that I can be there until 7 a.m. That is my preference. But it's like I roll in, I see my first JD, I say hello to everybody, I get my DP, and the three of us will take a stroll around the set, what we're going to do. And so and then basically, hopefully, I check in with my AD all day. So there you go. I am checking in with you regularly and seeing where are we. So I keep asking you, how long do I have for this? Are we on schedule? I always want to know that because I will adjust accordingly. And so, yeah, hopefully something explodes and hopefully we kill someone. That would be also high in my
on
list.
camera. Always make sure it's rolling at the time. Yeah.
On camera. Yes, that would be very high. I love stunt days and I love special effects days. I love like that. That's like if it's a day of just a whole bunch of people talking, I am less interested. I mean, I'm there. Like I'm still there, obviously. But I'm very happy when like there's a special that day. That's that's my happy.
And Alex, same question to you.
Yeah, I guess I don't see like too much difference between a short and a feature, like in terms of like the day. I don't know why I'm just jumping to your like, what is your ideal? Like, what is your sort of like, I don't know if you want to say like happy place or something, but I would just say like if you are able to get your actors to a place where they're giving like a performance that, or you push them to get somewhere, and you see like quote unquote you're making movie magic. You have those feelings, like those feelings where just like, yes, this is something. This is sparks. Those are, for me, that's like the highlight. But yeah, I guess I try not to be too emotional on set. Like I'm not really an emotional person on like I'm very in tune with sensitivities and things like that, because you have to be when you're directing. You have to have this sensitivity to did they hit that line the right way? So you need to know that with like the emotions that your actors are giving each other, you need to have that. But when like in terms, it's you kind of have to separate that when it's just like you just need to get through your day. You need to like, it's a moving train that you just like you get in there and just like, we just need to make this day happen. And every day it's just like that, like, let's make this day happen. Let's do it the best we can. And then at the end of the day, you debrief and you say what went wrong, what went right. Oh my God, why not trouble saying that? Yeah, so that's about it.
Jason, same question to you. What does your dream shooting day look like? What does your typical shooting day look like?
So a typical shooting day is when I get all the shots on my shot list. That would be my typical shooting day. And in terms of the difference between shorts and features is that you get more special shots in features. I think, Karen, you mentioned special shots, and there were moments in Golden Delicious where I got a bird's eye view of the protagonist on his bed, and that was a special shot. And I know that I wouldn't be able to get it in a short because we just didn't have enough time. But in a feature, I was able to beg for it. I got an hour for it, and I was so happy. That made my day when I got that special shot and really elevated the film. So that makes it for an elevated shooting day for me.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't those the fun days? Like you get to anything with a squib, like, oh my God, I get to shoot someone. Like I really love those moments. Like, oh, we blew something up, right? Like sorry, that sounds terrible. I'm not a pyromaniac. I just like when things like, blow up by, just by.
I have very mixed feelings about stunt days. Although like I'm with you, like they're the good days because like, a lot of stuff that you're worried about or you've put into planning or an indie, you often only have a couple of times to execute it because you maybe only have one of the thing you're trying to blow up or squirt blood out of.
Yeah.
But that's the part that then also is really tense because you're worried, like, what if it doesn't work, or what if we don't get it on camera the first time, or what if we don't get to rehearse it more often, and like that starts to be the concern point. So yeah, I have mixed feelings about stunt days, but they are in my mind the most fun ones. Yes, Jason.
My emotional state is usually pretty calm during shooting days because like the stunts, these special shots, they've been thought about. They've been they've been thought about, and so the train is already moving, and so all you have to do is just stay on the train and enjoy the ride. Versus in pre-production, my emotional state is a bit more like stressed out, hectic. Like we got to do this, we got to do that, we have to meet this deadline. But once you're on set and the train is moving, it's like, okay, let's play here.
I
Right.
fully agree with that. Actually, like as a director, when I direct, the set time is the fun time, the time I feel most comfortable with, the time I'm actually excited, like a little puppy dog. All your friends are around you and you get to play with them and everybody's there for you. It feels really great. Pre-production, stress city. Everything that could be going wrong is going wrong. And you never have enough time for everything. As a producer, it's the complete other way around, where in pre-production, I'm calm, everything's calm, we're all good, we're going to make it through every problem. And then on set, it's like everything's on fire. And you have to put out every fire. And so it's really interesting to have that kind of difference. Let's talk about emotional state. Like you guys have each referenced to it, but like, what is your emotional state during a shooting day? Like Jason's talked about, that happiness. Karen, how do you feel on your shooting days?
I'm like the Energizer Bunny. So I don't sit. So for the full 12 hours, apart from the lunch, I don't sit behind the monitor. I always stand. So I always have a monitor that is at my standing height. I pop around all day. And so it's especially fun if someone dies. But apart from that, I'm usually like, I'm pretty on. So yeah, it takes me the hard part for me is actually unwinding at the end of the day because I've had my energy level up so high. I don't know where that started from, but I've never been, it's not that I'm not calm. I think I'm just running on so much adrenaline that tends to be my state for most of it. So luckily, if someone has music, I can dance a little bit in between, I can do just to decompress a little bit.
We heard yesterday from cinematographers that music on set is actually something that they've really started to endorse. It keeps the energy going a certain way. So I like that as well. We use music at Wrap.
Especially if it's inappropriate, like we had a fight sequence, and what we were seeing on the screen was so wrong that my producer started putting on Barry White, and that made it so inappropriate in the best possible way. And then that was like, because it was a fight sequence, and all we got is like, I've been getting anyway.
I would think the Benny Hill theme would be really good for that.
Oh yeah, and bad songs in your head. Like every time we had a running scene, I had the Peanuts running through my head, so it's like anyway, that was not the music we ended up using, but that's
great running music. I want to go on record saying that. Let's talk a little bit about your AD relationship. This isn't a question that I had prepped, but a question that I actually feel like I want to ask. What is it like working with an AD for you? And to be really clear, also, what is the difference between working with an AD on a short versus working with an AD on a feature? Let's open with Alex on this one.
What is the relationship with AD like?
Yeah.
It's that's a super critical position. A good AD will just really be, I mean, they're the voice, everyone's heard this, but they're the voice on set. So what I love is for the AD to for me a really good AD is someone that you know is a calming presence, but also is keeping you moving. Maybe calming is not the right word, but you kind of know what I mean, where it's just like they're keeping you moving, but they're not a barker. Like I don't like these, ADing is not about, you know, barking orders to people or saying like, you know, you're not doing your job or you need to do this and you go over there and all this sort of stuff, like micromanaging. They should, everybody on set knows their job and what they need to be doing. And the AD is sort of like this person that's keeping everyone on pace. And it's like this voice underneath, like a good AD is like this voice underneath that's just kind of like moving you to where you want to go. And then before you know it, they're, sound director ready, sound ready. And then before you know it, you're shooting your shot. So yeah.
Okay, let's move on to Jason for the same question. ADs.
Well, on shorts, I think you could try different people in the position of first AD, and that's a great way to see them shine and rise up to their potential. I've done that a couple of times with new people that I want to work with, and then on features, I'd like to get veterans, not veterans. I like to get more experienced people, and like people that know more than me and who can also they have an opinion. They're not necessarily just rubber stamping what I want to do, right? So I want to have somebody that can I can bounce ideas with, because yes, there is always a more efficient way of doing things, but then there's also they have to understand the creative risks that I need to do in order to create the film that I want. Because if we were to constantly do things efficiently, we have a boring film and choose very static subscribed shots. But I need to have somebody that's willing to take the journey with me in my first AD. So and one thing that I realized is I want to have a first AD that has access to software that is that's used in the industry. So I noticed how important it was on a feature. So an Excel spreadsheet just doesn't cut it. Movie Magic helps. All these other tools that industry uses for a feature, I think that's really important to have as part of your toolkit with the first AD. So yeah, I hope I answered that question. I don't know if I did.
I feel like you did. Karen, same question to you.
Yeah, on depending on the short film, not that I don't love you as an AD, I can get away with sometimes not even having one. Like that's happened. Whereas on a feature, you are indispensable. You are pretty well you're the person yeah, it's hopefully, again, it's like what Alex and Jason both said. It's basically the person who's going to keep you on track, set the tone for the set, like you don't want to barker or yeller, or because that's coming from above. But also if people do need to get hustled, my first AD, who's incredible on the Chair or Die movie that I did, he's so experienced, and he described himself as basically an Australian shepherd. Like basically you're keeping the sheep corralled, no nipping, nobody should be bleeding by the end of this, like it's just a little nip here and there, like keep everything it's that. So your personality is that of keeping things moving, but in a way that doesn't feel like, where people don't feel resentful that, oh my God, there they are again, you know what I mean? And it's about setting a respectful work environment, because it is everybody's work environment as well, while keeping things moving, and always knowing exactly, like it's in being there for me the whole time we were prepping. So I may not have a shot list, but that person knows exactly what I'm doing. Even if it's not like down to the shot list, you know exactly my style, what I'm going to do, like what our big moments actually are and how to plan for that. And and I keep, like, again, that's the conduit between you, the filmmaker, and basically your producer. Like all the other elements have to be in place. And so throughout the day, I am pretty well next to the first AD almost the entire time. If I'm not right beside my DP and the cast, it's usually finding out what's happening, because the first AD always knows. Like if we're all standing around, I always want to know, like, what's happening? What are we doing? And they usually tell me that here's the holdup. This is what's happening here. And it's your best friend on set.
First AD should never be creating a resentful environment on set, especially. You're never going to get your best work out of your crew from being antagonistic to them. Anybody who says otherwise, don't hire them. It's very good advice. Let's move into post-production. And this is the last phase we're going to talk about today. I may drop a couple of questions here, but let's get to the nitty-gritty here. And something that I actually am really interested to hear how you guys, whether you guys differ on this one. When do you bring in an editor? Do you bring them in pre-production and involve them in that process, or is this something that is a relationship that is solely the purview of post-production? And in feature world, has this been something that you've had a different process with than in the short world? I see movement from Karen here, so let's start with you, Karen. Editors, when do you bring them in?
Day one.
Day one.
Absolutely. Because essentially the editor to me is who I'm going to be spending the bulk of my time with after this is done. So we go over script even, like in some ways, if they have questions now, that's helping me with my shot list and helping me with my prep. I want to know that they're on the same page as me when it comes to what we're shooting, how I'm planning on shooting it, because on a bigger feature, they might be assembling as you're working. So you're right there at the very beginning. If there's things where they're already asking, like, how are we covering this and how is this going to be working, they might have questions, and it actually helps me, especially with stunt sequences, fight sequences, anything that is really technical. If I don't have my coverage, we're going to be struggling with this in post, and that is not the time to be struggling with it. I would rather struggle with it early, like I said, if I don't have all the answers, let's know what that is beforehand. If I've got a big, like, again, like we talked a little bit about the set piece. If I've got a big set piece that we absolutely need to shoot, and it's going to be the heart of this film, I would love for any feedback from my editor early on, because that's a big component. And that's even in short films. I try to bring them in so that we have a dialogue that's happening early, so there's no surprises.
Can I ask, Karen, what questions what discussion is that then with, is it coverage? Is it like you're going to tell them, what you're going to go over coverage that you're going to get for that? Yeah.
Absolutely. I will go from, like, even if I've got a special, like what's written on the page isn't how I'm going to shoot it, I will walk them through what shots they're going to be getting, or what I'm envisioning in my head. Like I had one, for example, where it was a suspense sequence, and we don't see the character that's in it yet. We're shooting a scene of, like, basically a shot of the bedroom. But I wanted over top of that for the sync sounds to be happening, because when we reveal the character, she's actually putting on a face mask, right?
Okay.
I wanted music going over top of it. I wanted the sound of water, like all this sort of stuff. And it wasn't evident based on the script that this is how I was going to shoot it. So I would walk that editor through what I was planning on doing, so that by the time she's assembling or whatever it is, because the studio's taking a look, or I just want to make sure that she at least knows what I was doing and that I'm not missing coverage. You know what I mean? Like, because we didn't see her washing her face. You don't see what's happening here. I'm already pre-lapping, like, say a thing. It just makes it easier. And so, I remember on this one, we had a big stunt sequence, and she wanted to know, like, we could have shot it a number of ways, but that was the only thing we did even a slight storyboard on, because again, we're throwing someone off a roof, right? So it's a big stunt sequence.
Yeah.
And just for her to know how it's going to be cut together, like what are the shots, what's the sequence of shots, And if she had any questions, again, everyone was involved in it. It was our editor, VSFX, everybody had to be involved in that. So the earlier, the better.
Alex, let's ask you the same question next.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of shorts with editors and had that working relationship. When it comes to features, though, I edited my first feature out of necessity because of budget it turned into like a huge learning experience, which was really good because then you understand more about what cuts work, what cuts don't. I guess I would just say on this point, it's super important to learn. Again, I'm going to say adaptability. Learn to change scenes, learn to play with scenes, learn to try editing scenes different ways, even if you don't like how it turns out. I was listening to a talk with, I can't remember his name. I think he's like Christopher Nolan's editor right now. And he was just saying he makes two different sequences. One's the sequence that he thinks Nolan will like and will want to watch. And then the other sequence is what he wants to try out to show Nolan that he maybe like Nolan might like this and it might be a different track or maybe the way that he thinks it might actually work better. But he's not even thinking about that. So yeah, try out different things, try out different ways. That's just really important and be willing to look at your work in different ways too. I think it's really interesting when, I'll give you the example in this last one. I edited a first pass of this last one because of budget, but then we got more funding came into the movie so we could hire an editor. So we did this weird thing where I did the first pass up to the rough cut. Then we hired an editor who gave some more juices to it and worked it over a bit. And that's sort of interesting because then I think what's interesting too is you can play around with dialogue in editing, which I never really thought about too much. You always think of the script being this sort of rigid thing, and then you move around some dialogue, and it's crazy how it kind of freshens up a scene or something, brings it to life in a different way. So,
Jason, editors, when do you bring them in? How do you use them?
I echo what Karen's doing. I bring them in pre-production. And get them involved early on so that they understand the tone of the film and the coverage, the shots that I'm going for, so that, for example, an insert shot that I'm doing is meaningful and that they can understand how to fit that in. Also, having an editor early on they can help catch some workflow issues that will impact them later on, such as resolution. Are you delivering in 4K or 6K, whatever? So they can help figure those things out for you, right? So it makes their lives easier. What kind of LUT is using? Are you planning to use, right? So that's all good. And then they can also they can also highlight some editing issues that might come up. For example, one thing that I learned on Golden Delicious was, if you're shooting a family scene and if you decide to have your frame dirtied up with other characters, well, then you are going to be trapped in you're going to be worrying about continuity with regard to the other actors in relation to the main actor. So it's better to shoot some clean singles, for example, so that you have control over the editing and you're not trapped with continuity issues with the other people in the background. For example, right? That was one thing that I learned from my editor through the process, and we kind of refined that. And an editor brings a fresh voice. They can also remind you. Sometimes, we want to. Sometimes we're with the story for so long that we can become bored, and we try to do things that seem to counter what we initially wanted to do, just out of boredom, right? And so the editor can remind us, "Hey, you talked about this a certain way. Let's commit to that. Let's preserve your original intention instead of doing something completely off, and then realizing you went down the path that you shouldn't have." So yeah, with shorts, of course, you don't have to worry about. You could bring an editor later on in post because it's more abstract, more experimental. You're trying new people out, but yeah, with a feature, I think you want to try to mitigate issues in post, right? Yeah, and one thing, an editor doesn't just edit; they have to also They have to help out with delivering turnaround to other department heads in order to hit your deliverables.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I didn't know. The job of the editor doesn't end with picture lock and that person walks away. They have to be involved in turning around the project for the sound house, the coloring people, right? Visual effects. There's all sorts of things that they have to do.
Mm-hmm. Karen, did you want to add something?
Oh, I was just going to say that the difference also that, just creatively speaking, when it comes to the difference between shorts and features is transitions are so important. So things that you'll want to be shooting whenever you can is if you've got any time in the day, on a feature and you've got a blank location, it's a perfect time to shoot just those transition shots, like some establishers, things that don't need crew or just minimal cast, because that footage is going to be so important. Like sometimes you didn't transition out of it properly. You might have to go to an establishing shot of your location or, empty hallways or whatever it is, just to constantly be shooting. And on a short, you may not need that as much because, again, it's not, you can bump from one scene to the next. You're so limited. But on a feature, just getting all that additional coverage and having the editors basically voice in the back of your head going, you're going to need that hallway. Why don't you do this for me? Or, just things like that really keep you on your game. Because again, that's really hard to recreate later. You're going to be buying stock footage or whatever it is to fill that in. But if you can do it with your DP, with your team, it'll at least feel cohesive and part of the whole thing. You can't get enough of those, those shots, beauty shots, B-roll, stuff that you just need to keep shooting.
One of the things that I learned from my editors is safeties. As Jason was talking about, dirty OTS reaction shots can go a long way to saving a scene. Like it's 2 seconds of shooting behind somebody's shoulder, and you'll use that shot a million times over if you need to, and it will fix ADR, it will fix all sorts of problems that you didn't even know you'd get to. And I know that it's like a hard pill to swallow for a lot of early directors who are very married to like, this is what my shot list is going to look like, this is what my scene is going to be. But when you get to the edit, you're like, wow, I really wish we had something where there was somebody reacting to this and I could put a piece of ADR over this and fix this whole scene, and you don't have it. So yeah, safeties, Jason, you're right, absolutely. Singles, dirty OTSs, everything that you could possibly have that you could cut to. I cannot stress that enough. Let's talk about rough cuts. What do you want to see in a rough cut, and how does the rough cut differ from picture lock? And I know this is a very vague question, and there may be a million answers for it, but let's hear what you guys have to say on this topic. Let's start with Jason for this.
For the rough cut, I want to see everything in the script in the rough cut. So everything, basically the rough cut is everything that the writer has thought about, and it's captured in there. And so I want to see it all laid out, right? And then you go through the hard part of starting to polish and see, okay, what do we really need this C plot, for example, right? Can we quicken up this pace? But yeah, a rough cut basically shows the writer's intent, and then afterwards the locked is how much is not really needed for the audience to understand to get the film in order to have it be released, if that makes any sense.
The leanest it can be.
Yeah, the leanest that it can be. So Golden Delicious started out 2 hours and 36 minutes. And it's
Wow.
yeah, and
I want to see that cut. I really want to see that cut.
Yeah, well, you may be wondering, oh, this is where's the time here? But the script itself was I think it was 98 pages.
Mm-hmm.
So 98 so it was not translating to a page a minute. But we got all the beats, the moments out, right? So 2 hours and 36, and then the finished version, not including credits, is 1 hour and 56 minutes.
Wow.
So that's
so
how
40
much.
minutes on the cutting room floor.
Yeah,
That's lean.
it is. Yeah, and we also we did test screenings. So that was one thing that that I learned was really valuable. I'm not sure, like for shorts, you don't have the time or budget, but for a feature, I think it's really important to do as many test screenings and get different opinions to make it as lean as possible.
Karen, same question to you.
Well, I'm the opposite from Jason. Mine goes from
Perfect.
short to longer as things go. So I am I'm pretty cruel with my own work. So I immediately start cutting. Like I'm Edward Scissorhands when it comes to that line. Jesus, that line again. So it's already down to its leanest, and then we actually start putting it back in. I just parse because otherwise you'd be getting the fastest truncated version of me as possible. So
it's like a Villeneuve film.
Yeah.
Alex.
Yeah, I would say the rough cut is it's your skeleton. It should be like you should be able to see all the potential of what the movie could be in the rough cut. That's what I want to see. Is I want to say, like, I want to show people the rough cut, and obviously it's a rough cut, but they're able to see where we can take it to the finish line. But then that's the thing, is like maybe the rough cut it's going to show a lot of weaknesses too. And that's a good thing, because then it starts those conversations of, are we getting enough of the story across? Is this scene working? Is this scene not working? So it's interesting. The rough cut to me should just be this, this thing that's full of potential.
Jason.
Should one try to preserve the writer's intent in the rough cut first before going in and chopping lines and scenes off? I feel like the writer at least is owed, that it is at least owed that rough cut, so they can see how everything flows, and you're basically preserving what they've done, right? Instead of just cutting it out on the floor in the rough cut. I don't know. That's what I think. I just like.
Do you bring the writer into the edit stage? Like, have you shown cuts to writers when you're not the writer? And how's that process worked for you?
Yeah, I have. Well, I've only made one feature film, Golden Elixir, and I brought in Karman into the rough cut stage to watch it, and I think he really appreciated me preserving everything that he originally intended, right? And then giving me permission. No, I mean I have creative control, but I also respect his work, right? And then he was able to see what wasn't working and what wasn't, what was and what wasn't, right? So then we so not we, but I made the lock version much more leaner as a result. Yeah, it's all about respect. I think like writing is a very challenging endeavor. I mean, at least it takes me a while to write, and so yeah, I think the writer should see at least how everything shows up before you chopping scenes, dialogues, and all that stuff.
How integral was the writer in the process of deciding what to remove? Like, did they look at their work now in its shot form and go, okay, those parts I think aren't as important as they were in the on page? How did that process kind of eke out?
Yeah, I mean, Gorman offered suggestions, and they were taken into consideration. So all I could say is, like, it enriches the work, right? We had some feedback about gaslighting, potential gaslighting, which I didn't even think about until someone says this person is potentially gaslighting the other person. It's like, oh, okay, you know, let's address that. You know, we weren't blind to it, and after that was pointed out, right? So, you know,
I'm not sure what you mean, Jason. Can you give more context? Gaslighting? What do you mean?
Yeah. So, okay. So in my story, there's it involves teenagers and a different interpretation of events in the past. And so you have one character saying it didn't happen that way, and then you have another character saying it really did happen that way, right? And so and so the character who's saying it really did happen that way happens to be the hero, and he was insisting that it
Okay. I get what you're
it had happened that way, and it impacted him in a certain trajectory. So I think the takeaway was that I had to be careful with that scene and just craft it to make sure I was aware of that topic, and also kind of address the fact that they're teenagers still figuring out themselves. They're not perfect, right? Yeah. So that was the line that I had to straddle. And yeah, so if you have more people looking at your work, you can see potential issues that could come up, right? Especially today, where you have fans dissecting work and seeing, what are you trying to say? What do you stand for? Right?
Someone's going to make a YouTube video on your film, and they're going to say things you didn't intend.
Yeah, exactly. And it's too late in the process to address that after you release it.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say it's interesting to hear Jason's perspective. It's interesting because I haven't worked with a writer in that way. So my feeling would be, if I was in the cutting room, am I respecting what the writer meant when he wrote the story? And it comes back to me I think this is the heart, not the story though. Like, is that not, that's what I would feel it would be like, am I respecting the writer's intention? Not necessarily, am I keeping in every word of dialogue? Do you know what I mean?
For me, I am trying to preserve the writer's intention,
right,
rather than every line of dialogue. But in the rough cut, it's rough. It's rough. So I try to
include everything in there.
I try to include everything because that's. You typically, rough is long and you polish. I mean, lock is shorter, right? So, no,
for me, not for me. It's the opposite. It's the opposite. But you know, I to that point, which I really like, is that in all, like, everything that we're doing, it's about not having ego. Like, and so we're all here to support the intent of the film, hopefully. And so it means, to me, the writer is subservient to the film. I'm subservient to the film. The producer is subservient to the film. So ultimately, I'm not there to preserve what the writer even, like, I mean, hopefully we're all doing the same film, you know what I mean? But it's all about what we're hopefully bringing to life in that project. So I'm less in the every word is sacred, you know, to the tune of every sperm is sacred. You know, I'm not that.
I was singing it in my head to that too.
Yeah, I say that all the time. I'm not precious about what that actually is. I just want it to be good. Is this the best scene we could have cut based on what we've got? You know, and we'll get feedback along the way. But for me, it's less important that it's to the page rather than, is this the best thing that we could have done? So the rough cut is basically my first unadulterated effort in making this thing the best thing it possibly could. And then, you know, fine cut, lock cut is really about timing. It's about, you know, at that point, people are weighing in, you know, whether plot points are missed or whatever it is. But it's almost like the opposite in the fact that my rough cut is like a sketch, you know, like it's the loose, this is where it's all going. And then if you need more stuff, then I'm filling it in, rather than the opposite, which is I'm chiseling it. Like, I think Jason is like a sculptor. He's got a block and he's chiseling it away. And I am doing a sketch and I want to just we'll fill things in as we go along. So
That's a
Let's
really good
that is a good. I was thinking sculptor versus like the stripping away versus adding clay as that. But I like that there's different approaches to this process, which is always so fascinating. I want to move away from the cut to a moment to talk about something else, which we often hear is half of the film, which is sound and music. So at what point does the sound design start, and how early, is considerations for sound and music made? And I know that this second part of the question is going to be, determined by budget most of the time, but how does this differ between shorts and features? Let's open with Karen for this one.
Oh, as a horror director, sound and doing thrillers and horror, sound design is absolutely almost 100% what I have to work with. So it's even more on a project like this. And I actually get my longtime composer Pat Caird. He's done almost all of my films. He's there also at script stage because for me, I'm often directing with basically, like, if there's a suspense scene that's there, I'm already thinking of what music I need to put over top of it. And the hardest thing I found with again with my stuff, I'm very I love Trent Reznor. I love Nine Inch Nails. I love that sort of industrial sound. I love when music isn't music, but it does, like, it's sort of that mix between music and sound design. So I write in sound design in a lot of the process. So it's actually happening all through editing as well. But the hardest thing that I did on the Bring It On film, because it's a horror/comedy for teen girls at PG-13, the music was the hardest thing that we actually had to deal with. Absolutely 100%. Pat did that as well, and he did a brilliant job of it. But again, within the same scene, you're going from a comedy beat to a horror beat, and then sometimes back, and so finding music that was even temp, that would even come close to, like, people on our rough cut, it was throwing the executives off because they were like, what is this? It's not quite horror. It's not quite drama. Like, what I mean? It wasn't hitting the way that we needed to. And that was really, it's going to be a huge component. Not that it isn't important in drama as well, but for horror and for comedy, it's a huge component. Like, you can go too broad. You can be too, like, not just creepy, but on the nose creepy, where you've just got that. Oh shit, not that one, right? There's that. And on the other hand, how bright of comedy do you want in the music? Because there's dark comedy music, there is teen comedy music, there's, like, how much music are you using all the way through? It becomes a huge component, not just in your, like, some people think after you're locked, that's when you get started. But no, in every one of how do you edit rough cut or anything without music and sound design? That is part of the language, right? So.
Alex, same question to you.
Yeah, sound is so huge. What did they say? It's 80%?
50% of the film.
50%. Yeah, absolutely.
I had a camera teacher tell me that, so, like, I trust it when the DP is telling you that they're only half the picture.
Yeah, it's weird, and that's, I guess, maybe I'll pivot this question a bit to maybe just mentioning that as a director, oftentimes I think of the role as a filter, because you're going to be given a lot of different suggestions, comments, criticisms. Things should go this way. You're not doing this right. Things need to go this way. And you have to constantly say, oh, this is a good idea. This is a bad idea. Or this is not the right idea. This is the wrong movie. This is the right movie for that idea. Yeah, you're acting like this giant filter of sorts. I'm thinking I'm again losing my train where I'm going with this one. Sound design, composer. I will mention that the composer for this last film, it was just it was a fluke happenstance that we got this. He wrote into our email for the production, and he just said, like, hey, introduced himself, and we had a conversation, and then suddenly Karen just mentioned Trent Reznor, right? It's just sort of like you have this conversation with your composer, and then you start, maybe you say like, do you know Mika Levy? Do you know Johnny Greenwood? Do you know, like you start mentioning different, and maybe you find that you're really on the same level with this person because they have, you know, similar music tastes or backgrounds, or they know who you're speaking their language and they're speaking your language. So that's really important. And same with like a sound designer. Like sound designers are so, like sound design. I've like such. I'm in just awe with this. Like it goes back to this thing of find people that can do their stuff better than you. If you have the budget, don't skimp out on sound. Never skimp out on sound. Go get the best sound that you can. Like if you have the budget, mix, do like a real proper mix. Yeah, all those things, all like right now I'm actually like I'm super stressed because of sound. We're in post-production. I need to get all this, like I'm doing some like additional ADR stuff. So I just actually watched, I screened the cut of the movie yesterday, and I'm looking at all these potential, and I don't know, maybe this is something you guys do or you don't do, but like I'm just like, oh, if I add like a little line here of ADR for this character in this scene, that's going to make that scene work. If I don't do like, or it might make it work a little better. Like it might hit the moment home. Because that character is not on camera, I can throw in an extra line there for the actor. These are all little refining details that you don't think about. But like maybe you're just like, oh, it's fine. The sound studio sent me a list of ADR, and this is what we're going to do tomorrow. And you can show up at your ADR and you can do that. Or you can like watch your movie and say, where can I make this work better? And honestly, you know what's frustrating? This goes back to another question. It's like I'm watching my movie and then I'm just like, oh, shit, I want to change a cut there. I want to like, this is like the lock picture, and you're just like, why is it so long on this shot? Why are we not cutting to the next scene right now? But yeah, that's
where was this emotion before?
Oh, sorry, just a quick one before Jason goes.
Yeah.
On that note, if you are on set and you have it in your head that you want to try something else, the perfect time to do your ADR, like wild lines and stuff, that is when you can do it. Like there's a little break in between things, you know, like there was like, you know, that something is off with that. Like you, or say the room was really huge, like you were shooting in, and you know that the sound wasn't great, and you know that you can grab a couple of lines. The actors are there, they're
right.
in character. It's better than ADR. ADR always sounds like ADR. You know what I mean? Like you fudge it and it works to a degree. But if you can do it on the day, even better. You're in the location, you've got the right sound, you've got everything all there. Just try to get some wild lines when you can, if you know that you're already missing it. Like it's in, we're going to need this. And so, yeah, I try to schedule wild lines in and around right before, right after lunch, you know, first thing up, just so that I get some of those off. And I've never been pissed with myself for trying to at least get some extra lines.
I've had kind of the opposite experience where I've had really bad experiences with wild lines, but I've had excellent experiences with ADR and getting some great performances out of them. Where it's just like sometimes with wild lines, you know, it's like, at least in my set experience, it's like everyone stop, we're going to do a couple of wild lines, or you have to pull them out. And then like maybe people are like, the grip and everyone freezes up, and then the actor feels like I'm on, like everyone has stopped for me to do this line.
Yeah,
you know, in this kind of
in the future, talk to your AD, have them set aside a shot and make it like a normal shot, but get all your wild lines there.
Yeah, that's what I did with my first AD. Yeah, it's usually I grab my first AD and say, okay, I need these lines. Can we schedule that in? And then he works it into the schedule, and so then I get my thing.
From a producing standpoint, saving having to get the ADR session rented and all of that stuff is absolutely a cost saver.
100%.
So you're there, everybody's there.
Anything you can get on set is better. Yes.
Yeah. And you know, cars are soundproof. So if you really need to pull an actor off into a car and record it with a sound recordist, like that's not perfect, but it's better than a lot of other scenarios. Jason, let's ask you the same question. Sound and music. When does that begin for you? How important is it?
Well, with music, it starts in pre-production. it starts in pre-production, and then with sound design, I would say it's in post. I mean, we during production, you have the location sound person record wild lines and you have them do wild lines. But I have my discussion with my composer earlier on, just so that we're on the same page in terms of tone. Excuse me. So I just wanted to focus back on the difference between shorts and features, and use that as a consideration between as consideration with sound design. So what I've learned is that for features, for shorts, you can get away with a festival mix, and once you finish your film, if you got into festivals and you want to release it online, that's fine, right? But with a feature, the goal is to try to sell it to a broadcaster or to a distributor, and so they will require what's known as stems and M&E, which costs money. And the reason why is they want to have the option of taking out the dialogue and putting in dialogue in a different language, or music in a different, or music from a different artist, for example. So that's why you want to have your dialogue separated from the ambient soundtracks. And anyway, so that costs money. And one thing that I'm learning is to make sure you have enough in your budget for feature to have that to satisfy the delivery requirement. Should you sell it to a broadcaster or distributor. So that's important, or else then you can have a festival mix for your feature, but then if somebody says, hey, I want to buy it, then you have to figure out the cost of getting that stems and M&E. And like what Alex mentioned earlier about the power of ADR, it's true. You can really refine a scene with good ADR. So we were fortunate with Golden Delicious to have some budget for ADR, Foley, special effects. And I relied heavily on temp music and worked with my composer to create something in the same vein. I'm a fan of 80s synth pop, so that's what you'll be hearing. And I learned so much about sound in the process.
The last question I'm going to be asking is, we're running close to the clock here. There's an old saying that a poem isn't finished, it's walked away from. So when are you finished a film? How do you know you're finished the film? And let's start with Alex on this one. You're muted. I'm just gonna, before you get started.
How embarrassing. I would say, you're never finished. You hit the export button. At least that's been my experience, is that I think you just choose. It's a choice. It's a choice to say we're done, because there's always more stuff you can do. Like I just gave you the example where you're looking at your cut, and then we already have a picture lock, and I can't go back on a scene, and I can't make another cut. And you're like, oh, damn, but I would really want to do it. And you just can't. So I think it's just at a certain point, it comes back to that question of deadlines, and you export. And then, you have different scenarios where, a studio, like look at what Karen said earlier, where she was like, I made this cut of the film, and then the studio made a cut and I liked it, even better. So that can happen too, right? So is a movie, it's almost like a philosophical question. Is it ever done, or are you just giving a version of that movie? And, later on in 10 years with this film, The Beehive, maybe we'll do a different cut and we'll export it. This is making me laugh, a 10-year anniversary. But yeah, you know what I mean, right? So.
Karen, when is your movie finished?
Oh, when the studio said it was done. So
Nice.
you know what? Even after that, we just went through QC and we went through the ratings thing, and they gave me an R. So we actually had to go back. Basically, I was aiming for PG-13. I already was bloodless. So yeah. Anyway, they didn't like a couple of scenes. So we thought we were done. We actually had already mixed and color corrected, and we got a worse rating than we thought we were going to get, and so we were not done.
Mm-hmm.
So much for we were done. We were done. And so yeah, there might be a thing, like sometimes you think you're done, and then what if you make a sale and the distributor needs a little cut here or there, right? Then and they paid enough money, then you are unlocking and you are fixing it up. So it's there might be little things like that. Hopefully not, but it happens. But yeah.
Jason, same question to you. When is your movie finished?
When you run out of money.
Good one.
That's it. Yeah, it's when you run out of money. I think with an indie, you can always find somebody perhaps to help you out here or there. But it's either running out of money or running out of time, one of the two. We're finishing our film at Picture Shop, formerly Finale, and there's only so much time that they can provide us. So, that'll determine when it's done, I guess. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, before we say our goodbyes, I just want to ask, what can we see from you next? What's coming down the pipeline? What do you got brewing in the future? And what are people going to be able to see of yours? Let's start with Karen.
So Bring It On, Cheer or Die goes to air. I think it goes on streaming services and then on Sci-Fi Network. Basically Halloween, since it's the Halloween special. So it would be weird if it came out at Christmas.
It wouldn't be too weird.
I mean, a little weird. It'd be counter programming, I would say. Yeah.
They did Nightmare Before Christmas. I still consider that a Christmas film.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a cheerleading season, but for sure there's that.
Jason.
Well, I'm hoping that first feature will play at TIFF. I think Alex, we're up to the same deadline at TIFF, right?
Right on.
It's called Golden Delicious. It's a coming of age teen drama about Asian Canadian teen who's trying to manage his father's dreams, his girlfriend's expectations, and then his newly awakened feelings for the boy next door. Fingers crossed that will open doors. And then I'm currently working on my second feature, which is a drama, and all I could say is it's a reverse kidnapping film right now. So, yeah.
Okay. Alex, same question to you.
Jason hit the nail on the head. I'm trying to get finish The Beehive, which is a sci-fi feature for TIFF deadline, and that's a story of a single father and his two kids discovering an alien infestation in their backyard. So that's extremely exciting to finish it up. And what's on the horizon? I mean, that's the thing. I guess speaking to the people out there, like all of us, we're always just you got to be hustling and writing and really just constantly developing something new and pitching your ideas, and it never finishes. So I have lots of stuff brewing. I'll also just briefly mention I'm a Métis person, so Indigenous representation is on screen is something I'm trying. A positive Indigenous representation on screen is something that I'm trying to go for. I'm not trying to say that other stories related to heavy topics in the Indigenous community, like trauma and such, are extremely important as well. But we need to be seen on screen, and this doesn't. I mean, Indigenous, diverse characters that are not stereotypes, and so we need to break those, and that's really important to mention. So yeah,
I feel very strongly about that as well, as a member of an often marginalized community that we're stereotyped almost all the time in media, and I absolutely feel for you in that category. And on the topic of TIFF, I'm going to be at TIFF this year, hopefully. So I hope to see both of your films there. And if you're there, let's meet up. Let's see each other, because that's one of the best parts, is watching your friends succeed at venues that large. I just want to thank you guys all for coming and joining us today. This was awesome. I had a great time chatting with you guys about this. I could go on for another hour. I don't know if my butt could. But this is really wonderful, and I just really want to thank you guys for coming out today and being a part of this.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to everyone. And
everyone.
It's just so cool to actually hang out with other filmmakers, which it's the whole fun of being in film festivals, right? Is to actually have meaningful conversations with other filmmakers whose work you are really excited to see. So.
Absolutely, and we hope to do more of these in the future. We realized this weekend that this is absolutely a great format and super fun, and it's really wonderful to hear different filmmakers talk about different processes and different ways that they approach their process. So, again, thank you guys for coming out today. And I'm just going to read the outro out. I want to thank our panel for joining us today, Alex Lasheras, Karen Lamb, and Jason Karman. I want to thank Creative BC and the Vancouver Short Film Festival, as well as our community partners, Cinevic, Kamloops Film Society, and the Vancouver International Film Festival, for allowing us the opportunity to have this wonderful conversation today. I want to thank our festival co-directors, Emily Walden and Nick Ayerbe Barona. And again, immediately following this, if not just a couple of minutes after, we will be having our series of VSFF Keep It Short speed meetings. You got to go right now to vsff.com and register quickly, so you can get a link in. Otherwise, you won't be able to join us. So again, thank you, panel, for joining us today. And thank you, everybody. We hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Abby, I'm going to join you at speed meeting.
Excellent.
I have to go to the bathroom.